Chapter 654. Hearing Yi Tianhua's words, An Hongda clenched his teeth and sighed, Brother Yi, although Zhang Chuanren's loss of his son is very painful, this matter really has nothing to do with us. If we compensate him, wouldn't it be telling others that this matter is our Shadow Alliance's fault? Yi Tianhua sighed, Since it has come to this, there's no point in thinking too much. Even if we suffer losses, as long as we can solve this matter, I think it's fine. An Hongda shook his head, Brother Yi, this matter, no matter how I think about it, I still feel a little unsatisfied. This matter clearly has nothing to do with us, but we have to compensate. This is simply unreasonable. If we agree, what if someone else does this? Then won't we have nothing to say? Yi Tianhua sighed, Then what should we do? We can't just watch Zhang Chunren lose his only son and do nothing. And Hongda shook his head. This matter has nothing to do with us in the first place. Zhang Chunren finding trouble with us is already an unreasonable act. If we agree to his conditions, wouldn't he be even more convinced that we deliberately didn't tell him about the snow leopard in order to harm his son? Wouldn't Zhang Chunren hate us even more? After hearing An Hongda's words, Yi Tianhua was stunned for a moment before he slowly shook his head. That's it. How about this, let's talk to them and see if we can reduce the free time. If it's possible, we'll agree to his condition. What do you think? Hearing Yi Tianhua's words, An Hongda nodded. If Zhang Chunren is willing to reduce the free time to less than a year, we'll accept it. On account of his only son, we'll agree to his request. At this point, An Hongda paused and turned to look at Yi Tianhua before continuing, Even if we agree, we'll have to tell him that we don't owe him anything. We're just doing it out of morality. However, if we help him, we can't let him think that we're in the wrong and that helping him is a matter of course. Only then can we agree to his condition. Otherwise, we definitely won't agree to his condition. Hearing An Hongda's words, Yi Tianhua was about to nod when Du Wudai suddenly said, Brother Yi, this matter is a little inappropriate? Yi Tianhua frowned after hearing Du Wudai's words. Du Wudai, is there anything wrong? Du Wubao nodded, Big Brother Yi, I don't know if I'm right or not. Let me tell you. Speaking till here, Du Wubao paused for a moment before continuing, Big Brother Yi, think about it. Regardless of whether we promised Lu Chunren 5 years of free information or 1 year of free information, if we only provide it to him alone, our losses would not be too great. But if we don't provide free information to him alone, wouldn't that be a huge loss? After hearing Du Wudai's words, Yi Tianhua shook his head. No, that won't happen. We only promised Zhang Chunren. Why would we provide free information to others? As soon as Yi Tianhua finished speaking, An Hongda exclaimed before Du Wudai could say anything. I understand now. Du Wudai, you're saying that Zhang Chunren will ask for information on behalf of others, right? Du Wudai smiled bitterly and nodded. That's right. That's what I mean. If Zhang Chunren takes advantage of our free information and asks for information on behalf of others, what should we do? Speaking till here, Du Wudai paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for Yi Tianhua to answer his question, he continued. That's not the most important thing. What's more important is that if Zhang Chunren sells the information in private after asking for information from us, then we're in trouble. After hearing Du Wudai's words, Yi Tianhua was stunned. After a while, he reacted. Just as he was about to speak, An Hongda spoke first. Big Brother Yi, it seems that we can't agree with them on this matter. If we agree and Zhang Chunren really does that, then wouldn't our Shadow Alliance become Zhang Chunren's Shadow Alliance? All the information will be sold by Zhang Chunren, and we won't get any benefit. This is absolutely unacceptable. Yi Tianhua sighed and shook his head with a bitter smile. It can't be. No matter what, Zhang Chunren is still the Vice Hall Master of the Secret Thunder Sect. Would he do such a thing? I think it's impossible. You must be wrong. After hearing Yi Tianhua's words, An Hongda said in shock, Big Brother E, if this matter is fake, then it's still fine. But if it's true, even if we sign a 1-year contract with Zhang Chunren within this year, I'm afraid our Shadow Alliance will become Zhang Chunren's Shadow Alliance. At that time, wouldn't we be in trouble? After hearing An Hongda's words, Du Wudai sighed. Actually, if Zhang Chunren only sells information, then it's not a big problem. At most, our Shadow Alliance will suffer some losses. It won't be a big problem. Speaking till here, Du Wudai paused for a moment before continuing, but if Zhang Chunren uses this information to do something bad, then that's the worst thing. After listening to Du Wudai's words, Yi Tianhua's face turned ugly. Du Wudai, do you think Zhang Chunren will do such a thing? Du Wudai smiled bitterly and shook his head. I don't know. I just said this to let Big Brother E be on guard. It's not that Zhang Chunren will definitely do this. No, he will definitely do this. Before Du Wudai finished his words, he was interrupted by An Hongda. Big Brother E, think about it. The people of the Secret Thunder sect went to the Qingling Mountain to look for the fire-soaring stone. As a result, they encountered a snow leopard on the mountain. Zhang Chunren's only son, Zhang Huoxing, was killed by the snow leopard. According to reason, this is because Zhang Huoxing's skills are not good enough. It has nothing to do with the information we provided. But even if it's this kind of thing, Zhang Chunren still has the nerve to use it to settle accounts with us. I also understand Zhang Chunren's pain, but his pain is based on his own carelessness. What does it have to do with our information? Big Brother E, under the situation that we have nothing to do with this matter, Zhang Chunren can still use this matter to blackmail us. It can be imagined that Zhang Chunren's character is definitely not good. I felt that I wouldn't be surprised no matter what a person with such a bad character would do. So I also think that what Du Wudai said just now is right. It is very likely that a person like Zhang Chunren will do such a thing. After hearing An Hongda's words, Yi Tianhua could not help but frown and murmured, Is Zhang Chunren such a person? He won't use this to do such a thing, right? An Hongda shook his head. Big Brother E, let's not talk about whether Zhang Chunren is such a person for the time being. But we have to be careful. If he really is such a person, then wouldn't we have been fooled by him? Du Wudai sighed. Being fooled is a small matter. If he uses our information to do bad things, wouldn't it ruin our reputation and make us unable to establish a foothold in the South region? An Hongda nodded. Du Wudai's words make sense. Zhang Chunren's only son, Zhang Huoxing, was killed. He might vent his anger on us, thinking that we were irresponsible and gave him false information. That's why Zhang Huoxing was killed by the snow leopard. Zhang Chunren is dissatisfied. If he uses this to take revenge on us, then we really can't guard against it. Speaking of this, An Hongda's tone paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for Yi Tianhua to answer his words, he continued. I guess this is Zhang Chunren's plan. He wants us to agree to his condition and then take revenge on us. Maybe the 5 years of free information he proposed is just a pretense. In fact, he doesn't care if it's 5 years or 1 year. What he cares about is the opportunity. As long as he grasps the opportunity, he will take revenge on us. After hearing An Hongda's words, Yi Tianhua shook his head and asked with some doubt, but we are only selling some information. If Zhang Chunren wants to take revenge on us, how will he do it? An Hongda sighed. If Zhang Chunren wants to take revenge on us through information, it's simply too easy. Speaking of this, An Hongda paused for a moment before continuing. For example, just like the information we sold to Zhang Chunren, saying that there was something on a certain mountain. Then, he sold this information to others, but he didn't tell the truth. What was said on a certain mountain was true, but what was on the mountain was false. When the person who received this information went to the location provided by Zhang Chunren, he didn't find such a thing. In the end, when he came back to look for Zhang Chunren, Zhang Chunren said that we told him the information and gave us the money for selling the information. In the end, the person who didn't find the thing will naturally come to us. At that time, we will definitely not admit it, because this is indeed not the information we sold. In the end, both sides will definitely fall out, and our reputation will be ruined by Zhang Chunren. After hearing En Hongda's words, Yi Tianhua frowned. After thinking for a moment, he slowly shook his head. You're wrong. If Zhang Chunren sold the information, why would those people come to us? The most important thing is, why would those people believe what Zhang Chunren said? So, if Zhang Chunren wants to use this method to take revenge on us, it's basically impossible. En Hongda shook his head. Brother E, I'm just making a simple analogy. If such a thing really happened, then when Zhang Chunren sold the information, he definitely wouldn't show up himself. He would find someone to pretend to be a member of our Shadow Alliance, and then sell the information to others. If Zhang Chunren does this, I believe that the people who bought the information will definitely think that we did this. At that time, even if we are in the right, we won't be able to explain it clearly. After hearing En Hongda's words, Du Wudai sighed. If it's just one person, we can deal with him no matter what. But if there are too many people, I'm afraid we won't be able to deal with them. At that time, I'm afraid our Shadow Alliance really won't be able to stay in the South County anymore. After hearing the words of the two, Yi Tianhua gritted his teeth and said with a bitter smile, although what you said makes sense, I don't believe that Zhang Chunren would do such a thing. And Hongda sighed. I don't want to believe that Zhang Chunren is such a person, but if he really is such a person, then wouldn't we be the unlucky ones? Yi Tianhua pondered for a long time before slowly saying, no matter what, let's talk about this in detail after we meet Zhang Chunren. Hearing Yi Tianhua's words, Du Wudai nodded his head and said with a bitter smile, that's the only thing we can do now. When we meet Zhang Chunren, let's see if he will raise such a condition. Then we will know whether he is such a person. And Hongda suddenly asked, Brother E, I remember you said there were two conditions. We were talking about the second condition just now. The first condition seems to be about compensation, right? Yi Tianhua nodded. Zhang Chunren made a total of two conditions. The first condition is about compensation, and the second is about free information. After hearing Yi Tianhua's words, En Hongda frowned and asked in a low voice, Brother E, what does Zhang Chunren want us to compensate? Yi Tianhua said with a bitter smile, 1 million gold coins. Zhang Chunren wants me to compensate him with 1 million gold coins as compensation for the wrong information. No. As soon as he heard Yi Tianhua's words, En Hongda exclaimed, no, absolutely not, that's too much. So much gold coins, we can't give it to him. Yi Tianhua nodded with a bitter smile. Indeed, I can't give it to him. It's not that I don't want to give it to him, but I don't have that many gold coins. Du Wudai shook his head with a bitter smile. Could it be that Zhang Chunren is crazy? Does he know how much 1 million gold coins is? And Hongda sneered. I'm wondering if Zhang Chunren has ever seen 1 million gold coins before. Yi Tianhua sighed. I originally thought that the second condition would be easier. I never thought that the first condition would be difficult. This 1 million gold coins, I can't take it out no matter what. And Hongda sneered. Big Brother E, I'm sure that Zhang Chunren is definitely not a good person. He actually dared to ask for 1 million gold coins. He didn't even think about whether his son is worth 1 million gold coins or not. Du Wudai also sneered and said, what's more, he not only wants 1 million gold coins, but also wants to secretly destroy our Shadow Alliance. I think this kind of person is definitely not a good person. Yi Tianhua shook his head. Don't talk about Zhang Chunren like that. If he's not a good person, how could he become the deputy head of the Secret Thunder Sect? Maybe there's some misunderstanding between us that made him say such outrageous conditions. Speaking of this, Yi Tianhua's tone paused, and then he continued, when we meet, we should be able to know what kind of misunderstanding there is between us. Misunderstanding? And Hongda sneered, Brother E, what kind of misunderstanding is this? It's clearly Zhang Chuanren's plan. His first condition is to get a sum of gold coins from you, and his second condition is to take revenge on us for Zhang Huosheng. He thinks that the reason why Zhang Huosheng was killed is all our responsibility. Chapter 655. After hearing in Hongda's words, Du Wudai nodded his head. He turned his head to look at Yi Tianhua and slowly said, and Hongda's words make sense. Zhang Chunren wants the gold coins and wants to take revenge on us. It's a good plan. And Hongda sneered, since Zhang Chunren wants to harm us, we might as well not agree to any of his conditions. Let's see what he can do to us. After hearing in Hongda and Du Wudai's words, Yi Tianhua slowly shook his head and sighed, the two of you, don't be angry. No matter what, Zhang Chuanren's son Zhang Huosheng was indeed killed by the snow leopard. We should understand that he is angry. When we get there, we will persuade Zhang Chunren. Hopefully, he will be able to get over it and not take it to heart. And Hongda sighed, hopefully, Zhang Chunren will repent and stop doing such harmful things. Du Wudai smiled bitterly and shook his head. We are hoping that Zhang Chunren will stop doing bad things. But, who knows, maybe Zhang Chunren is thinking about the bad things we did. And Hongda was stunned when he heard this. Then, he smiled and said, Du Wudai, are you talking about the news? Du Wudai nodded. Maybe Zhang Chunren thinks that we did it on purpose. We purposely gave them a fake news to lure them up the mountain. Then, the location we gave was the place where the snow leopard appeared, and used it to harm them. And Hongda smiled bitterly and shook his head. If he really thinks so, then we are wronged. It was just a piece of news about the flaming stone. How could it be transferred to the snow leopard? It's really hard to understand. Du Wudai frowned and suddenly asked, Zhang Huosheng was killed when he was looking for the flaming stone. But, who can prove that Zhang Huosheng was killed at that time? Or, was he really killed by the snow leopard on Qingling Mountain? After hearing Du Wudai's words, Yi Tianhua was stunned. Then, he hurriedly waved his hand with a smile. Du Wudai, you're thinking too much. No matter what, Zhang Chunren wouldn't do such a thing to shift the blame onto others. And Hongda shook his head and said with a solemn expression, Big brother, after Du Wubao's reminder, I feel that it is possible. At this point, and Hongda's tone paused before he continued, think about it, we have been selling information for so many years, and this has never happened before. I can be sure that this kind of thing must have happened before. The information we provide is only a single piece of information. For example, where are the ores or where are the spirit beasts? In short, the information we sell is relatively simple. Just like the news about finding ores, I'm sure that in the past, there were people who received our news and ran into powerful monsters while looking for ores, and then died. I'm sure that something like this has happened, and it's not a small number. Then, since something like this has happened, why hasn't something like this happened to him before? And Hongda paused for a moment, but he did not wait for Yi Tianhua to answer him, and continued to speak. That's because no one would think that their accident has anything to do with the information we provide. So even if someone was killed by a monster, no one would come and find trouble with us. At this point, An Hongda paused for a moment before he continued, but, knowing that this matter has nothing to do with us, why would Zhang Chunren come and find trouble with us this time? Big brother E, don't you think it's suspicious? After hearing An Hongda's words, Yi Tianhua couldn't help but frown. After a while, he shook his head. I think this is just our imagination. We don't have any enmity with Zhang Chunren. He buys information from us, and we sell information to him. It's just a simple relationship, why would he want to harm us? And Hongda shook his head. What if Zhang Chunren doesn't want to harm us this time, but what if he just wants to get some gold coins? Du Wudai nodded his head. That makes sense. His first condition is 1 million gold coins. This clearly shows that he wants gold coins. As for his second condition, he wants us to provide 5 years of free information. And the free information for these 5 years, Zhang Chunren can provide it to others, and then he will get profits again. After hearing the two's words, Yi Tianhua shook his head. If Zhang Chunren wants gold coins, he can just ask us for 2 million gold coins. Isn't that simple? Why does he need a second condition? And Hongda shook his head. Big brother Yi, you can't think like that. I believe Zhang Chunren also understands that if he asks you for 1 million gold coins, it's impossible for you to have it. At most, you can only give him a few 100,000 gold coins. So, no matter if he asks you for 1 million gold coins or 2 million gold coins, the result will be the same. It's impossible for you to take it out. At this point, An Hongda's tone paused for a moment, but then, he didn't wait for Yi Tianhua to answer his question, and continued to speak. Big brother Yi, let's make an example. Zhang Chunren asks you for 1 million gold coins, but you only have 500,000 gold coins. Then, Zhang Chunren will ask you to give him the 500,000 gold coins. In other words, even if Zhang Chunren asks you for 2 million gold coins, you still only have 500,000 gold coins. And Zhang Chunren, no matter if he asks for 1 million gold coins or 2 million gold coins, he will get the same amount, 500,000 gold coins. It's because of this reason that he will ask for the second condition, 5 years of free information. If it's done well, Zhang Chunren will definitely sell the 5 years of free information for a high price, even far exceeding the 1 million gold coins. Hearing in Hongda's words, Du Wudai nodded. If it's like this, if Zhang Chunren wants to ask you for gold coins, this should be the best way. On one hand, he can take away all your gold coins, and on the other hand, he can use the information to sell for money. This way, he will get even more gold coins. After hearing the two's words, Yi Tianhua's face turned ugly. That's impossible. How can Zhang Chunren be such a person? And Hongda sneered. I think this Zhang Chunren is definitely such a person. Otherwise, he wouldn't ask you for so many gold coins just because of a piece of information. This is a bit too ridiculous. It's obvious that Zhang Chunren is here to cause trouble. Hearing in Hongda's words, Du Wudai couldn't help but frown. If they are here to cause trouble, then doesn't that mean that meeting them today will be very dangerous? Yi Tianhua shook his head. I don't think so. Everyone is here to discuss the conditions. If the discussion doesn't go well, we can talk again next time. There shouldn't be any danger. After hearing Yi Tianhua's words, Du Wudai suddenly remembered what happened last night. He couldn't help but bitterly smile and shake his head. Water Spirit and Fire Spirit only wanted to take away the people from Kikiaman, but they never thought that things would develop to this point. For the sake of 6 pieces of level 20 equipment, the 3 families actually beat them up so badly. Du Wudai and Shadowless left early, so they didn't see what happened next. If they did, they would be even more emotional. And Hongda frowned. This time, I dare say that Zhang Chunren is definitely not here to negotiate. Because, his goal is not to negotiate but to get gold coins. Yi Tianhua shook his head. That's impossible. We can't have that many gold coins on us. Even if they catch us, what can they get? Hearing Yi Tianhua's words, Du Wudai suddenly said, Big brother Yi, I advise you to be careful. Speaking up to this point, Du Wudai paused for a moment before continuing. Just like Water Spirit and Fire Spirit last night, they didn't have any equipment on them. But, as long as they write a contract, it's very likely that the equipment will be exchanged from the Tiangongmen. And Hongda nodded. That's right. If Zhang Chunren really catches us and makes us write a contract, then this contract will become an IOU. Even if we want to renege on the debt, I'm afraid that we won't be able to. Hearing in Hongda's words, Yi Tianhua coldly laughed. If they really dare to do that, then even if I have to risk my life, I definitely won't let them get what they want. Du Wudai bitterly smiled and shook his head. Big brother Yi, don't underestimate the enemy. Last night, water spirit and fire spirit were the same as you. They clenched their teeth and didn't write a contract. Speaking up to this point, Du Wubao paused and laughed bitterly before continuing, but in the end, after being tortured, didn't he still obediently write down the agreement? Hearing Du Wudai's words, cold sweat suddenly appeared on An Hongda's forehead. He suddenly turned his head to look at Yi Tianhua and quickly said, "Big brother Yi, Du Wudai is right. We have to be careful. If Zhang Chunren does something, the unlucky ones will still be us." Hearing the two's words, Yi Tianhua frowned and thought for a moment before slowly shaking his head. "This matter is just our guess. No one can guarantee that what you said will happen. This matter, maybe it's just Zhang Chunren's heartache for his son, so he's angry and wants to ask us for some compensation to appease the anger in his heart. Maybe it's not as complicated as you said." And Hongda sighed, "If things are as Big Brother thinks, then it's good. But what I'm worried about is that things aren't as simple as Big Brother thinks. If Zhang Chunren really has bad intentions and we are not on guard, the ones who will suffer will be us." Yi Tianhua smiled and shook his head. He turned his head to look at the people around the table. "And Hongda, you're too careful. Look at how many people we have. If Zhang Chunren wants to deal with us, how many people would he need to send to deal with so many of us?" And Hongda looked at the people around the table. Although he agreed with Yi Tianhua's view, he was still worried. This time, Yi Tianhua and An Hongda came out with a disciple each. Yi Tianhua's disciple was called Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan's martial arts were quite good. Although his Qinggong was not as good as Shadowless, in terms of martial arts, he was much stronger than Shadowless. And Hongda's disciple, Sima Xing, was definitely not someone to be trifled with. In terms of martial arts, even Lu Chuan might not be Sima Xing's opponent. In addition to Du Wudai and his disciple, there were a total of 6 people at the table. These 6 people were all experts. Especially Yi Tianhua, and Hongda and Du Wudai, they were the experts among the experts. No matter who it was, it would not be easy to deal with these 6 experts. It was because of this reason that Yi Tianhua was so confident. Even if Zhang Chunren really wanted to do something to him, he had no need to be afraid of him. Seeing Yi Tianhua's confident look, Du Wudai's heart suddenly jumped. Through everyone's discussion just now, he started to suspect that Zhang Chunren really had other ideas. From Du Wubao's point of view, if it was only because of the news, the Shadow Alliance would definitely not be blamed. But Zhang Chunren just had to use this to make things difficult, wanting to ask for a large amount of gold coins. This was obviously something that should not have happened, but it happened. How could this not arouse suspicion? Du Wudai had just experienced a round of mutual deception. At this moment, his heart was even more fearful. He faintly felt that this matter was definitely not so simple. There must be some inside story. Thinking of this, Du Wudai turned to look at Yi Tianhua and asked tentatively, "Brother Yi, this time, only the few of you came out?" Yi Tianhua nodded and said with a smile, "This is not a big deal. The few of us are enough." Speaking of this, Yi Tianhua's tone paused for a moment before he continued, "Now with the 2 of you, the number of people is more than enough. There is nothing to be afraid of. With so many of us, even if Zhang Chunren wants to make a move, we will definitely not be afraid of him." And Hongda smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Brother Yi, this time it is obvious that Zhang Chunren wants to stir up trouble. We have to guard against him." Yi Tianhua waved his hand. "I have just said that everything that I said just now was just us thinking of the worst. Perhaps this is just our imagination. Zhang Chunren is not such a person. He just wants to vent the anger in his heart." And Hongda sighed, "Brother Yi, if this matter is really so simple, then it is really great. What I am most worried about is what we just said." Speaking of this, and Hongda's tone paused for a moment before he continued, "Zhang Chunren may want to destroy our Shadow Alliance, or he may want to get a large amount of gold coins from us. In short, I feel that this Zhang Chunren is definitely up to no good this time. We had better be careful. After hearing An Hongda's words, Du Wudai frowned and asked tentatively, Brother Yi, if he is nearby, can we still find help? After listening to Du Wudai's words, Yi Tianhua was stunned for a moment. Then he turned to look at Du Wudai and asked with a smile, Du Wudai, are you worried that with our martial arts, we can't block Zhang Chunren's attack? Du Wudai nodded. Since Zhang Chunren took the initiative to invite us, he must have come prepared. He is already clear about our strength. I am afraid that he has already made arrangements. Chapter 656. Du Wudai sighed. If Zhang Chunren really wants to talk to us, I'm afraid he has already made arrangements to suppress us in terms of strength. When the time comes, he can use his influence to threaten us and achieve his goal. Yi Tianhua shook his head. Impossible. How could Zhang Chunren do such a thing? I don't believe it. Speaking of this, Yi Tianhua paused for a moment before continuing. Moreover, what benefits does he get from scheming against us? Other than some gold coins, what benefits can he get? Don't forget, when he got the gold coins, he also offended us. Isn't he afraid that we will take revenge on him in the future? And Hongda suddenly opened his mouth. I don't think he is afraid of our revenge. Because, as long as he gets our gold coins, I'm afraid he will immediately scheme against us and get rid of us to prevent future troubles. Speaking of this, An Hongda paused for a moment before continuing. If Zhang Chunren is really such a person, he will definitely do such a thing. It is almost impossible for us to guard against him. Sooner or later, we will fall into his trap. Hearing An Hongda's words, Yi Tianhua frowned. If Zhang Chunren is really such a person, what should we do? Hearing Yi Tianhua's question, An Hongda sneered. If Zhang Chunren really wants to scheme against us, then we don't need to be merciful to him. As long as we get rid of him first, we can ensure our own safety. Hearing this, Yi Tianhua hurriedly waved his hand. No, we definitely can't do that. If we get rid of Zhang Chunren, I'm afraid we will immediately offend the Tanlei sect. Once we offend them, they will definitely take revenge on us. At that time, won't we still be pursued endlessly? And Hongda sighed. After we get rid of Zhang Chunren, it is very likely that we will offend the Tanlei sect. However, if we don't get rid of Zhang Chunren, we will have to face Zhang Chunren's endless threats. At that time, our situation won't be any better than facing the Tanlei sect's pursuit. Speaking of this, An Hongda paused for a moment before continuing. Since Zhang Chunren doesn't want us to have an easy time, then we definitely can't let him go. At worst, we will all die together. It's no big deal. Hearing An Hongda's words, Yi Tianhua sighed. It was just a simple matter. I didn't expect it to become so complicated. After hearing the two's words, Du Wubao turned to look at Yi Tianhua and asked doubtfully, Brother Yi, if Zhang Chunren really wanted to put himself in our shoes to deal with us, why would he do that? At this point, Du Wubao paused for a moment. Then, without waiting for Yi Tianhua to reply, he continued to speak. Based on Zhang Chunren's actions, unless there is some deep hatred between them, he would definitely not do this. Could it be that Big Brother Yi has some enmity with Zhang Chunren, so Zhang Chunren did this? Yi Tianhua frowned and thought for a moment. After a long while, he slowly shook his head and said with a bitter smile, No, I don't have much contact with Zhang Chunren. Even if we did have some contact, it was only about information. There is no deep hatred between us. It's not enough to make Zhang Chunren hate me so much. Hearing this, Du Wubao muttered to himself, This is a little strange. Zhang Chunren wants to blackmail us. In fact, even if he succeeds, I'm afraid he will be like us and offend the Shadow Alliance. Isn't he afraid that the Shadow Alliance will take revenge on him? Speaking of this, Du Wubao paused for a moment before continuing. Although the Secret Thunder sect is strong, the Shadow Alliance is not weaker than them. Even if Zhang Chunren relies on the Secret Thunder sect's reputation, It is impossible for him to offend the Shadow Alliance. And Hongda nodded. You are right. If Zhang Chunren only wants to blackmail some gold coins, wouldn't it be easier for him to deal with some small sects? Speaking of this, and Hongda paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for Yi Tianhua to answer his question, he continued. With the power of the Secret Thunder Sect and Zhang Chunren's deputy hall leader, even if he bullies one or two small sects, I'm afraid these small sects will not dare to say anything and can only let him bully them. However, Zhang Chunren did not bully those small sects but went against our Shadow Alliance. This is indeed a little strange. Du Wubao nodded. The most important thing is that even if the Secret Thunder Sect and the Shadow Alliance go to war, the Secret Thunder Sect will not gain any advantage. Perhaps the Secret Thunder Sect will be at a disadvantage. Under such circumstances, why would Zhang Chunren offend us? After hearing the two's words, Yi Tianhua's frown deepened. He also felt a trace of unusual meaning from this. Just like what An Hongda said, why would Zhang Chunren offend the Shadow Alliance? It should be known that the Shadow Alliance's strength spread throughout the Anwu country. Why would Zhang Chunren offend such a huge monster? If Zhang Chunren only needed gold coins, he would go and bully those small sections. He did not even need to bully them. As long as he opened his mouth, those small sects would take the initiative to send themselves to his door. Since there was such a simple way to get gold coins, why would he use such a method and not hesitate to offend the Shadow Alliance to scheme against Yi Tianhua? Why did Zhang Chunren do this? What was his purpose? From the beginning, this matter began with a piece of information. Zhang Chunren bought a piece of information from the Shadow Alliance, saying that there were flaming stones on Green Spirit Mountain. Therefore, he sent his son, Zhang Huosheng, to Green Spirit Mountain to look for flaming stones. However, Zhang Huosheng's luck was not good. He encountered a ferocious snow leopard and was killed by it. Because of this matter, Zhang Chunren proposed two conditions to Yi Tianhua. One was that Yi Tianhua would pay him 1 million gold coins to compensate him. The other condition was that Yi Tianhua would sell him 5 years of free information. The first thing was that Zhang Chunren asked for compensation. Although the amount was huge, it was pardonable as compensation. The most suspicious thing was the second condition. If Zhang Chunren used the second condition to harm Yi Tianhua or even the Shadow Alliance, it was very likely that he would do it. The most important thing now was whether Zhang Chunren had such thoughts or not. Up until now, everyone had been talking about the worst idea. From the beginning, Zhang Chunren wanted to ask for gold coins. The 5 years of free information, he said, was just to get more gold coins. If that was the case, Yi Tianhua would accept it. At most, he would negotiate with Zhang Chunren and reduce the 5 years of free information to 1 year. However, if Zhang Chunren wanted to use the free information to harm him, then this matter was too terrifying. The question now was Zhang Chunren a good person or a bad person? If Zhang Chunren was a good person, the two conditions, he said, were just to get more gold coins. This was human nature and it was not a big deal. However, if Zhang Chunren was a bad person, then it was too terrifying. He would use the second condition that Yi Tianhua agreed to set him up. If this was really the case, he would not be the only one who would be unlucky, but the entire Shadow Alliance in South County. What was Zhang Chunren thinking? Yi Tianhua felt a headache. The two conditions that Zhang Chunren put forward could become a good thing or a bad thing. The question was, did Zhang Chunren want to do good or bad things? Seeing Yi Tianhua frowning and thinking, An Hongda sighed, Brother Yi, no matter what Zhang Chunren thinks about this matter, we must not be careless. If Zhang Chunren really has ulterior motives, then something big will happen. Yi Tianhua nodded with a bitter smile. I understand, but who dares to judge what Zhang Chunren is thinking? None of us know. If we treat Zhang Chunren as a bad person, but if Zhang Chunren is a good person, then wouldn't we have misunderstood him? Hearing Yi Tianhua's words, An Hongda sneered, But if Zhang Chunren is a bad person and we treat him as if he is a good person, then we will be the ones at a disadvantage. At that time, not only will we be at a disadvantage, but the entire Shadow Alliance will be at a disadvantage. Zhang Chunren's reputation will even be ruined. This is all possible. If things develop to this point, then we will be the sinners of the Shadow Alliance. Tianhua nodded. You are right, we really can't agree. We must be careful. Speaking of this, Tianhua paused for a moment before continuing. Later, when we go to the date, we must carefully observe Zhang Chunren's movements. If he has ulterior motives, then we must make an early response. Hearing Tianhua's words, Du Wudai shook his head with a bitter smile. Brother Yi, if Zhang Chunren really has ulterior motives towards us, I'm afraid that as soon as we attend his date, we will immediately fall into his trap. At that time, even if we know that we have fallen into his trap, I'm afraid there is nothing we can do. Hearing Du Wudai's words, and Hongda nodded. Du Wudai is right. If Zhang Chunren really wants to do something to us, I'm afraid that as soon as we attend the date, he will immediately make a move on us. At that time, even if we want to retreat, we won't have the chance to do so. Du Wudai said solemnly, this is definitely not a small matter. If we are careless, I'm afraid it will be too late to regret. Hearing the two's words, Tianhua also felt that the situation was serious. He sighed, but we have already agreed to Zhang Chunren's date, we can't possibly not go. Speaking of this, Tianhua paused for a moment, but immediately after, without waiting for the two to answer him, he continued. If we don't go, won't that give Zhang Chunren another chance to say that we are not trustworthy and are not willing to honor his appointment? Du Wudai sighed. Brother Yi is right. If we don't go, it will give Zhang Chunren an excuse to say that we are not trustworthy. Once the news spreads, it will not be good for our Shadow Alliance. Hearing the two's words, and Hongda frowned. If what you two said is true, then we must go to Zhang Chunren's date? Hearing in Hongda's words, Du Wudai nodded and said with a bitter smile, I'm afraid so. In order to not give Zhang Chunren this excuse, I'm afraid we must go to this date. And Hongda frowned and said, if we go to this date, won't we fall into Zhang Chunren's trap? Du Wudai nodded with a bitter smile. That's right. I'm afraid Zhang Chunren has already calculated this point. He predicted that we must go to this date. Whether we want to go or not, we must go to this date. And Hongda sighed. If that's the case, won't we fall into Zhang Chunren's trap for sure? Du Wudai shook his head. That's not necessarily the case. As long as we think clearly about what Zhang Chunren wants to do, we can naturally make corresponding arrangements for what he wants to do. And Hongda sighed again, but we don't know what Zhang Chunren wants to do. This is the biggest problem. Du Wudai nodded. What we said just now, although not necessarily accurate, at least we can judge the following possibilities. The first possibility is that Zhang Chunren is just sad that his son was killed by the snow leopard and wants to ask for compensation from Big Brother to make up for his loss. Although the gold coins compared to his son are far from enough, it can at least calm him down. The second possibility is that Zhang Chunren has other motive. His real motive is to harm us, and even the entire Shadow Alliance. Speaking up to here, Du Wudai paused for a moment before continuing. Maybe Zhang Chunren has other motives, but we can only think of so much now. As for what Zhang Chunren is thinking, we can mainly judge from the 2 points I just mentioned. One is that Zhang Chunren simply wants the gold coins as compensation. The other possibility is that Zhang Chunren wants to use this opportunity to scheme against us. After listening to Du Wudai's words, Tianhua shook his head with a bitter smile. If it were me, I would rather believe that Zhang Chunren is the first kind of person. He just wants some gold coins as compensation. And Hongda sneered and shook his head. Big Brother Yi, your thinking is too simple. In my opinion, Zhang Chunren clearly has an ulterior motive. He must be doing this for the second possibility that Du Wudai mentioned. That is, he wants to harm us, and even the entire Shadow Alliance. Tianhua shook his head. As we just said, if Zhang Chunren wants to harm us, isn't he afraid of offending the Shadow Alliance? Once he offends the Shadow Alliance, even the Secret Thunder Sect won't be able to protect him. After all, he has done bad things. I don't think the Secret Thunder Sect will protect him. So I don't think Zhang Chunren is that stupid. Although he has harmed us, he has also fallen into danger. This is purely a situation where both sides suffer. I don't think he will do this. After listening to Tianhua's words, An Hongda sneered and shook his head, slowly saying, "Things are definitely not that simple. If Zhang Chunren wants to harm us, he must have thought of a foolproof plan. Even if he has harmed us, he certainly can't offend the Shadow Alliance. Naturally, no one will chase after him. So I think that as long as Zhang Chunren has thought of a way out, there is absolutely no problem with this matter." Chapter 657. After listening to An Hongda's words, Tianhua frowned. If Zhang Chunren has thought of a way out, then what kind of way out can he think of to make up for this mistake? Speaking of this, Tianhua's tone paused, but immediately after, he did not wait for An Hongda to answer his question and continued. If Zhang Chunren wants to set us up, this is not a small matter. If he succeeds, no matter what he does, the Shadow Alliance will know that he is the one who set us up. At that time, no matter what excuse Zhang Chunren comes up with, the Shadow Alliance will never let him go. An Hongda shook his head. As for what excuse Zhang Chunren will come up with, I can't think of it now. However, since Zhang Chunren dares to do this, he must have a fearless idea. Otherwise, he would never dare to do this. Tianhua shook his head. Perhaps we are all wrong. Zhang Chunren only wants compensation and has no intention of harming us. Therefore, he is not afraid of the Shadow Alliance's revenge. Do you think that there is no such possibility? And Hongda shook his head. This is just thinking in a positive direction. Zhang Chunren only wants to ask for some compensation to make up for our mistakes. However, if he only wants compensation, he should only need the first condition. As long as he gets the gold coins, it should be considered as compensation. However, why does he want the second compensation? 5 years of free information is definitely not a small matter to us. Even if it is only a year of free information, it is still not a small matter. If I, Zhang Chunren, want to use these 5 years of free information to set us up, this is simply too easy. Therefore, we have to be careful. Du Wudai nodded. That's right. No matter whether Zhang Chunren has any malicious intentions towards us, we have to be on guard against him. If he really has any bad intentions, then it will be terrible. After hearing the two's words, Tianhua frowned. I also know that what you said is right, but how can we be on guard? We will go to his appointment later. Even if we want to be on guard, I am afraid it is already too late. There is no time to prepare anything. Du Wubao sighed. Big Brother you are right. There is not much time left. It is not easy to think of a way to deal with it. After hearing their conversation, An Hongda frowned and asked, We don't have much time now, but are we going to go on a date without any preparation? An Hongda paused for a moment before continuing without waiting for them to reply. If we go to Zhang Chunren's date like this, wouldn't it be terrible if he really has ill intentions towards us? Du Wubao smiled bitterly and nodded. Although we know that things will be bad, what can we do? If we don't attend Zhang Chunren's date, we will be breaking the contract. If Zhang Chunren uses this matter as an excuse, then we will have nothing to say. An Hongda slammed the table and said angrily, Why should we care about him? Since we know that he wants to screw us over, why should we go? We might as well ignore him and see what he can do to us. Hearing An Hongda's words, Du Wubao nodded and turned to look at Tianhua. Tianhua smiled bitterly and shook his head. How about this? I am the one who promised Zhang Chunren to go on the date. Why don't you guys go back and I go on the date myself? If something happens to me, you guys can come to my rescue. What do you think? After hearing Etienne's words, and Hongda frowned but did not say anything. Du Wubao suddenly remembered the water spirit and fire spirit, and couldn't help but sigh. He turned to look at Tianhua and slowly said, Big brother E, if you go on the date yourself, wouldn't that be exactly what they want? After hearing Du Wubao's words, Tianhua was stunned and asked tentatively, Du Wubao, are you saying that Zhang Chunren wants to make a move on me? Du Wubao nodded. Big brother E, you are alone. If you go on the date, once Zhang Chunren wants to make a move on you, you will not be able to escape from his evil hands. Once you are caught by them, even if we want to save you, I'm afraid it will be too late. Speaking until here, Du Wubao paused for a moment before continuing. More importantly, once you are caught by them, I am sure that they will have a way to make you talk. Once you write down the agreement, even if you want to go back on your words, it will be impossible. You can only follow the agreement. Other than that, you have no other choice. After hearing Du Wubao's words, and Hongda sighed, if we really write down something that is disadvantageous to us, then I'm afraid that we will really be at Zhang Chunren's mercy. Tianhua shook his head. I don't think so. With the two of you outside as support, even if they catch me, aren't they afraid that the two of you will take revenge on them? Du Wubao smiled bitterly and shook his head. Big brother E, if they really catch you, then I'm afraid that no matter what we say, it will be useless. Even if we want to save you, Zhang Chunren will not agree. If Zhang Chunren uses you to threaten us, perhaps the two of us will also be controlled by him. That will be a total loss, with no possibility of a comeback. And Hongda also said in shock, Big brother E, Du Wubao is right. Once he uses you to threaten us, even if we want to save you, we won't dare to do anything. At that time, it will be really bad. Tianhua shook his head. The two of you don't have to worry. Although Zhang Chunren's martial arts are not bad, if he wants to catch me, I'm afraid it will be impossible. This kind of thing will definitely not happen. Du Wubao sighed. Big brother E, I know that your martial arts are strong, and Zhang Chunren is definitely not your opponent. However, if Zhang Chunren really wants to deal with you, he will definitely know that his martial arts are not as good as yours. Then he will definitely ask for help, at least in terms of martial arts, to come. At that time, even if your martial arts are higher than Zhang Chunren's, they have the advantage in numbers. The one who will be at a disadvantage will still be you. Tianhua smiled and waved his hand. Since you said so, then I promise you that if Zhang Chunren comes to the date alone, then I will talk to him and see if there is any solution. Speaking until here, Tianhua's tone paused for a moment before he continued. If they have the advantage in numbers, then I will immediately return. I believe that if I want to run, they will definitely not be able to catch me. Seeing that Tianhua still wanted to attend Zhang Chunren's date, Du Wubao was really anxious and hurriedly said, Big brother E, if Zhang Chunren doesn't have any evil intentions, then it doesn't matter what he does. But if he has bad intentions, then I'm afraid that your every move is already under his control. Speaking until here, Du Wubao's tone paused for a moment before he continued. If you really attend this date and Zhang Chunren does have evil intentions towards you, then he will definitely think that you will escape and will definitely make arrangements to prevent you from escaping. You have to guard against this. After hearing Du Wubao's words, Tianhua was silent for a moment before he slowly said, Just like what we said just now, whether Zhang Chunren wants to set me up or not is still uncertain. Since it hasn't happened yet, isn't it a little inappropriate for us to assume that Zhang Chunren is a person? After hearing Tianhua's words, and Hongda snorted coldly, Big brother E, this is just a simple matter. The information we sold to Zhang Chunren is not wrong. There is indeed fire soaring stone on Green Tower Mountain. No one can deny this. This proves that our information is accurate. We didn't sell Zhang Chunren any information about the snow leopard. Even if his son, Zhang Huosheng, encountered the snow leopard, it has nothing to do with us. Since it has nothing to do with us, why would he want to settle the score with us? This is obviously illogical. Since Zhang Chunren can do such an illogical thing, then there is reason to believe that he must have a motive. As for whether he wants to set us up or not, I dare not say. But I am sure that he will definitely do something to us. Du Wudai nodded. That's right. Zhang Chunren can push the blame to us for things that have nothing to do with us. It's obvious that Zhang Chunren is capable of doing anything. We must not lower our guard and fall into Zhang Chunren's trap. Yi Tianhua thought for a moment before he turned to look at Du Wubao, and said in a deep voice, "When we made the agreement with Zhang Chunren, he wanted to meet me and an Hongda. This means that even if he wants to deal with us, he will only deal with the two of us. In this way, even if Zhang Chunren has a trap, it will be a trap designed for the two of us." At this point, Yi Tianhua paused for a moment before continuing. "Now, we've coincidentally met you, and you're also someone Zhang Chunren didn't expect. Even if Zhang Chunren set a trap in front of us, the trap he set was for two people. If the three of us go on this date, I believe that with our strength, we should be able to deal with the trap he set for two people. Even if we can't beat them, it shouldn't be a problem for us to escape. So, I feel that all of us should go on this date together." After hearing Yi Tianhua's words, although Du Wubao still felt that it was a little inappropriate, since Yi Tianhua had said so, there was no way to refute. Helplessly, he could only nod silently. And Hongda said with a wry smile, "Brother Yi, the trap that Zhang Chunren set may be set for the two of us. But what kind of trap did he set?" At this point, and Hongda's tone paused for a moment. But immediately after, he didn't wait for Yi Tianhua to answer his question and continued speaking. "On a date in the wilderness, there are only two possibilities if Zhang Chunren wants to scheme against us. One is that there are many people. Zhang Chunren can target our martial arts and find more people who are far stronger than the two of us. This way, he can easily suppress us. This is also a method. The other possibility is that Zhang Chunren may have some kind of hidden weapon that can silently hurt us. If he really has such a hidden weapon, it is definitely not good news for us. It is even more terrifying than having more people. We have to be careful." After listening to An Hongda's words, Du Wubao nodded. An Hongda is right. Zhang Chunren can indeed think of these two methods. He can use more people to suppress us, or he can use some kind of hidden weapon to suppress us. At this point, Du Wubao paused for a moment and sighed before continuing. "Also, they may have some kind of drug that can make people silently implanted with this drug. Either they will lose their martial arts or they will faint on the spot. In short, no matter what the result is, it will be a serious blow to us." After listening to Du Wubao's words, An Hongda's expression changed. He said in shock, "Du Wubao is right. If Zhang Chunren has some kind of drug, then no matter how high our martial arts are, I'm afraid it will be useless." Du Wubao sighed. "If Zhang Chunren is only using some kind of drug to trap us, I believe that with the martial arts of the three of us, once we realize that something is wrong, it is impossible for all of us to be implanted with his drug. One or two of us will definitely escape. So what I am most worried about is that Zhang Chunren will use both methods at the same time." At this point, Du Wubao paused for a moment. However, he did not wait for the other two to speak and continued to speak. "If Zhang Chunren has some experts to suppress the three of us and then use some kind of drug to deal with us, if Zhang Chunren really does this, I'm afraid that none of us will be able to escape. All of us will fall into his hands." And Hongda nodded. "Big Brother Yi, since we know that it is so dangerous, are we still going to attend his date?" Yi Tianhua hesitated for a moment before slowly nodding. "Since I have already promised Zhang Chunren that I will attend his date, then I will definitely attend." At this point, Yi Tianhua paused for a moment before continuing, At worst, when the three of us attend his date, we must carefully observe the movements of the four people. Once we discover that something is wrong, we must not hesitate and immediately escape, lest we fall into Zhang Chuanren's trap. Seeing that Yi Tianhua knew that it was dangerous but still wanted to attend Zhang Chuanren's date, and Hongda helplessly sighed and said with a bitter smile, "Big brother Yi, since we are going to attend Zhang Chuanren's date this time, since we already know that he might harm us, we must be careful. If we really discover that something is wrong, we must not hesitate and immediately escape from the scene. We must not hesitate." Hearing in Hongda's words, Yi Tianhua nodded. "No problem. When the time comes, we must observe the terrain carefully to see if Zhang Chunren has any bad intentions." Du Wubao said with a bitter smile, "To be honest, I am very much against this date. Since you guys insist on going, then I can only accompany you." At this point, Du Wubao paused for a moment. However, he did not wait for Yi Tianhua to reply and continued to speak. "When we go, everyone must remember that we must not casually get close to Zhang Chunren. Even if we find that it is safe, we must not get close to him, in case there is a trap." And Hongda nodded. "That's right. Since we thought that Zhang Chunren might use some kind of drug to harm us, then not getting close to him is the best choice. No matter what method he uses, we must not get close to him, in case we get drugged. That would be terrible." Chapter 658. After hearing Du Wudai's words, and Hongda nodded. "That's right. Du Wudai is right. Zhang Chunren is extremely cunning. We must not get close to him. If he really has some medicine, we will not be able to guard against it." After hearing their words, Yi Tianhua nodded. "You're right. We have to remember this. No matter what Zhang Chunren does, we can't get close to him." Du Wudai sneered. "Not only can we not get close to him, but we also have to pay attention to the direction of the wind. If Zhang Chunren stands at the upper wind and uses some kind of drug on us, we won't be able to escape even if we're far away from him." And Hongda nodded. "I didn't expect there to be so many things to pay attention to. If we didn't have a good talk today, we might have fallen into Zhang Chuanren's trap without knowing it." Yi Tianhua smiled. "Since we already know so much, I believe that as long as we pay attention to Zhang Chuanren's plan to harm us, Zhang Chunren won't be able to harm us." Du Wudai sighed after hearing Yi Tianhua's words. "What we just talked about are just some simple methods. Maybe Zhang Chunren has other ways to deal with us. In short, we have to be careful. We can't let Zhang Chunren have the chance to harm us." Hearing Du Wudai's sigh, Yi Tianhua couldn't help but sigh as well. "I originally thought that it was just a small matter. Through our analysis just now, I suddenly realized that Zhang Chunren is really capable. To be able to develop such a small matter into such a huge matter, and even use this matter to threaten me. If I think about it carefully, it's really strange." After hearing Yi Tianhua's words, An Hongdao was overjoyed. He quickly smiled and said, "Big brother Yi, since we already know that Zhang Chunren is playing tricks and wants to take advantage of the opportunity to harm us, why don't we not go to his date, so that he won't have the opportunity to harm us?" After hearing An Hongda's words, Yi Tianhua smiled bitterly and shook his head. "An Hongda, some things are not as simple as you think. If we don't go to Zhang Chuanren's date, what will he think?" Yi Tianhua paused for a moment, but he did not wait for An Hongda to reply and continued speaking. "If Zhang Chunren really wants to harm us, even if he doesn't succeed this time, he will definitely think of an even more ruthless plan to deal with us. We are in the open while Zhang Chunren is in the dark. If he wants to scheme against us in the dark, even if we can hide for a while, we will definitely not be able to hide forever. Sooner or later, we will fall into his trap and fall into his trap." At this point, Yi Tianhua paused for a moment before continuing, "Since we'll be fooled sooner or later, why don't we meet him today? This way, at least we'll be out in the open. Even if Zhang Chunren has a plan, as long as we're careful, we'll find a way to avoid it. More importantly, we can use this opportunity to find out what Zhang Chunren is thinking. Is he a good person or a bad person like what we said? Don't you think so too? After hearing Yi Tianhua's words, An Hongdao was stunned for a moment. He originally thought that Yi Tianhua hadn't thought through the reasoning behind this, so he insisted on going to Zhang Chunren's date. But he never thought that Yi Tianhua already had a plan and had thought through the reasoning behind this. After listening to Yi Tianhua's words, An Hongda suddenly felt that it was very reasonable. If they went to meet Zhang Chunren now, even if Zhang Chunren had a plan, most of it would be on the surface. At least they could be on guard. But if they didn't go on this date, they wouldn't be able to predict what Zhang Chunren would do next time. Once they lost this opportunity, no one knew when Zhang Chunren would make his move and what kind of method he would use. Since they knew that Zhang Chunren would make his move, but they didn't know when he would make his move, wouldn't they have to live in fear every day? Instead of living in fear every day, it was better to go on this date with Zhang Chunren today. When the time comes, when they meet Zhang Chunren, they would naturally know whether this matter was good or bad. Thinking of this, An Hongda sighed, Brother Yi, it seems that we have to go on this date? Yi Tianhua nodded, we really have to go. If we don't take this opportunity to figure out what Zhang Chunren is thinking, we won't have another chance in the future. We can only rely on ourselves to guess. So this time, we have to go and figure out what Zhang Chunren is thinking. Du Wudai sighed, although we know that we have to go, I have a feeling that Zhang Chunren's date isn't that simple. He will definitely use some kind of plan to set us up. The most important thing is that we don't know what kind of plan he will use. That's the worst thing. An Hongda nodded, that's true. What kind of plan will Zhang Chunren use to deal with us on this date? Speaking of this, An Hongda's tone paused, but then he didn't wait for Du Wudai to answer his question and continued. Will he hire someone to deal with us or use some kind of hidden weapon to deal with us or like what we just said, use some kind of drug to deal with us? What kind of method will he use? Speaking of this, An Hongda's tone paused for a moment before he continued. If we can figure out what kind of method he will use to deal with us, then we will naturally have a way to guard against it. After listening to An Hongda's words, Du Wudai frowned and thought for a moment before he slowly said. From the looks of it, the possibility of Zhang Chunren using the first method is the highest. That is, he will hire some martial arts experts to deal with us. Speaking of this, Du Wudai paused for a moment before he continued. I'm guessing that since Zhang Chunren dares to deal with our Shadow Alliance, I don't think it's just him alone. There should be others. As long as they join forces to deal with us, it will naturally be twice the result with half the effort. The success rate will also be higher. Hearing Du Wudai's words, An Hongda shook his head. We don't know why Zhang Chunren wants to set us up. However, our Shadow Alliance isn't weak either. No matter who wants to deal with us, they will have to think carefully before they do so. Because no matter what benefits they can gain from it, they will eventually be hunted down by the Shadow Alliance. I don't believe that many people will dare to face the Shadow Alliance. Even the sects that are stronger than the Shadow Alliance may not be willing to deal with the Shadow Alliance. The Shadow Alliance mainly sells information and doesn't have any conflict of interest with the other sections. On the contrary, it is very beneficial to them. Once they offend the Shadow Alliance will never sell any information to them in the future. At that time, the ones who will suffer losses will be them, not the Shadow Alliance. Therefore, I think that this matter is what Zhang Chunren wants to do. Maybe he is blinded by the benefits, or maybe there are other reasons, so he came up with this plan to deal with us. After listening to An Hongda's words, Yi Tianhua nodded. That's right. What we do doesn't have any conflict of interest with the other sections. Naturally, no one will find trouble with us. If Zhang Chunren really wants to find trouble with us, he shouldn't be able to find someone to partner with him. At this point, Yi Tianhua's tone paused, and then he continued, Now it seems that the only person who wants to scheme against us is Zhang Chunren alone. After listening to the two's words, Du Wudai shook his head. What you said is wrong. Since they want to scheme against us, they must have thought through the details. Even if they kill us, it won't cause any trouble. After hearing Du Wudai's words, An Hongda shook his head. That's impossible. No matter who wants to deal with us, it's impossible for them to kill us silently. Moreover, there should be people who know that we're here for this date. If we're killed during this date, Zhang Chunren will definitely be suspected. No matter how he explains, I'm afraid it'll be difficult to get rid of his suspicion. After listening to An Hongda's words, Yi Tianhua nodded. That's right. An Hongda is right. We are here for Zhang Chunren's date this time. I have already instructed my disciples. Although I didn't explicitly tell them what we are here for, they definitely know that we are here for Zhang Chunren's date. If we are killed by Zhang Chunren during this date, my disciples will definitely spread the news. At that time, even if Zhang Chunren doesn't want to be suspected, it will be impossible. And Hongda smiled and said, So I think that even if Zhang Chunren wants to do something to us, he won't be able to find a partner. In addition, I'm afraid that he won't be able to think of any way to get rid of his suspicion. Hearing the two's words, Du Wudai smiled bitterly and shook his head. Then, according to what you said, there won't be any danger for our date this time. At this point, Du Wudai's tone paused, but he didn't wait for the two to answer his question and continued. Since Zhang Chunren can't get rid of his suspicion, then he definitely won't do it even though he knows it's dangerous. It seems that this date is just for the gold coins and nothing else? After hearing Du Wudai's words, Yi Tianhua smiled and nodded. I think so. If Zhang Chunren really did harm us during this date, then he will definitely be suspected. Once it's found out that he did it, the Shadow Alliance will definitely not let him go. At that time, no matter what benefits he gets, I'm afraid it will all be in vain. After hearing Yi Tianhua's words, Du Wudai frowned and turned to look at An Hongda. He asked tentatively, An Hongda, don't tell me that you think so too? After hearing Du Wudai's words, An Hongda smiled bitterly and shook his head. Although what Brother Yi said makes a bit of sense, I keep feeling that things aren't so simple. Zhang Chunren clearly has nothing to do with us, but he still wants to use this as a pretext to make a fuss. This is very suspicious. Speaking until here, An Hongda's tone paused, but then he continued without waiting for Du Wudai to answer his words. And the most important point is, if Zhang Chunren wants to claim compensation, then why didn't he come to us directly and talk face to face? Wouldn't it be better for you to do this? But he didn't do this, and insisted on inviting us to this wilderness. Do you think this is normal? After hearing An Hongda's words, Du Wudai suddenly clapped his hands. An Hongda, you're right. If he really just wants compensation, it's very easy to go directly to Brother Yi. Even if Brother Yi agrees to compensate him, it's easier to prepare the gold coins at home. Maybe he can take the gold coins away on the spot. But in this wilderness, there are no such convenient conditions. Even if Brother Yi agrees to compensate him, it's impossible for Brother Yi to bring so many gold coins with him. He also needs to go home to prepare. It's impossible for Zhang Chunren to take the gold coins on the spot. He still needs to wait for a while before he can go to Brother Yi's house to retrieve the gold coins. In this way, if Zhang Chunren wants to get the gold coins, the best way is to go to Brother Yi's house. Wouldn't it be more convenient than coming to this wilderness? An Hongda nodded after hearing Du Wudai's words. That's indeed the case. That's why I always thought that Zhang Chunren definitely didn't have good intentions. Although I couldn't guess what he wanted to do, I was certain that he was definitely scheming against us in the dark. Du Wudai turned his head to look at Yi Tianhua and asked tentatively, Brother Yi, what do you think? After listening to An Hongda's words, Yi Tianhua's face turned ugly. After hearing Du Wudai's question, he couldn't help but sigh, and then nodded. An Hongda is right. This is indeed suspicious. Since Zhang Chunren can send a disciple to inform me of this date, why didn't he come directly to me? Even if he has some conditions that he can't say, we can still discuss it. Why would he want to meet me in this wilderness? Hearing that Yi Tianhua also understood Zhang Chunren's intentions, and Hongda sighed, Brother Yi, since we already know Zhang Chunren's intentions, I think it's better that we don't attend Zhang Chunren's date, so as to avoid being schemed against by him. After hearing An Hongda's words, Yi Tianhua let out a long sigh. And Hongda, I just said that if we don't attend Zhang Chunren's date, we will have to face his schemes in the future. Are you willing to live in fear every day? Hearing Yi Tianhua's words, An Hongda's face suddenly changed. After being silent for a while, he slowly sighed. It seems that we have to attend Zhang Chunren's date this time. Yi Tianhua nodded. The most important reason we attend his date this time is to see what Zhang Chunhua's intentions are. If he really only wants some gold coins as compensation, then we can discuss a suitable price as compensation for losing his only son. Speaking up to this point, Yi Tianhua's tone paused, and then he continued, but if he really has ulterior motives, then we also know what he is thinking. We should try to resolve this matter this time, so as to avoid getting into trouble in the future. Hearing this, An Hongda nodded. If that's the case, then let's attend this date. Chapter 659. After Yi Tianhua and the other two finished their meal, they hired 2 carriages outside the door and headed out of Qingsha town. Yi Tianhua had been here before, so he sat in the front carriage and left Qingsha town, continuing to walk along the official road. Yi Tianhua, who was sitting in the carriage, looked at the back of the coachman sitting in front of the carriage and sighed in his heart. In the hotel, although he said it casually, his heart was definitely not relaxed. From the beginning, he had doubts about this matter. For so many years, they had sold countless pieces of information, but nothing like this had ever happened. It was just a piece of information about the Flaming Stone, but Zhang Chunren blamed his son Zhang Huolin's death on the Shadow Alliance. This was somewhat unreasonable. Yi Tianhua was absolutely wrong. Zhang Huoxing's death had nothing to do with this matter. Since Zhang Chunren was able to pin this matter on him, there must be a reason behind it. But what was the reason? Was it really like what he said just now, that Zhang Chunren wanted to harm him? But there was no reason. Zhang Chunren was not familiar with him and did not have much contact with him. With the two of them like this, why would Zhang Chunren want to harm him? This was what Yi Tianhua could not figure out. If there was some deep hatred between him and Zhang Chunren, it would be reasonable for Zhang Chunren to seek revenge. However, there was no deep hatred between him and Zhang Chunren. Zhang Chunren wanted to harm him. This was somewhat unreasonable. What was the reason? Why did Zhang Chunren want to harm him? If he did not want to harm him this time, then why did Zhang Chunren do this? Gold coins. Did Zhang Chunren really only want gold coins? Yi Tianhua thought of the 2 conditions that Zhang Chunren gave and could not help but frown even more. Zhang Chunren's first condition was to ask for 1 million gold coins. Although 1 million gold coins was a lot, Yi Tianhua thought that it was not worth it for Zhang Chunren to only ask for 1 million gold coins. Zhang Chunren was the deputy hall master of the Tantric Thunder sect and was considered a well-known figure in the South County. However, if he did this and it really spread, it would definitely be a heavy blow to his identity. The secret Thunder sect mainly produced firearms. If Zhang Chunren wanted to earn more gold coins, then he should be able to earn a lot of gold coins in his own territory. But why would they want more gold coins from him? That was a strange thing. The firearms sold by the secret Thunder sect were not cheap. If Zhang Chunren wanted to get some gold coins from them, it would be much easier. Why did he have to take the risk of ruining his reputation by coming up with such a plan? There was also Zhang Chunren's second condition, which was 5 years of free information. This condition was even more suspicious. It was indeed a bit too much to ask the Shadow Alliance to waive the information fee for 5 years. The first condition was 1 million gold coins. Although it was a large amount, it was far from comparable to the second condition. Just like what Zhang Chunren had said in the hotel, if Zhang Chunren made good use of the 5 years of free information, he would definitely get more than 1 million gold coins. More importantly, if Zhang Chunren wanted to harm him, he could use the 5 years of free information to damage his reputation. Even if Zhang Chunren wanted to harm him, he could use the 5 years of free information to damage his reputation. Just like what Zhang Chunren had done to him, the news was fake. Thinking of this, Yi Tianhua's forehead broke out in a cold sweat. If this was really the case, then Zhang Chunren's intentions were simply too vicious. Yi Tianhua snorted coldly. If Zhang Chunren really had such a vicious intention, then he would never let him go. But there was another problem. If Zhang Chunren used such an obvious trick, wouldn't it add a lot of trouble to him? If Zhang Chunren's plan succeeded, even if it succeeded in harming him, then the Shadow Alliance behind him would not sit idly by. They would definitely seek revenge on Zhang Chunren. At that time, even if Zhang Chunren had great ability, he would absolutely not be able to escape from the Shadow Alliance. Zhang Chunren had the secret Thunder Sect behind him, but Zhang Chunren was in the wrong in this matter. Once the Shadow Alliance sought revenge on Zhang Chunren, the secret Thunder Sect would not be able to do anything even if they wanted to. At that time, Zhang Chunren would definitely not be able to escape. He would definitely follow in his footstep. However, since he could think of it, how could Zhang Chunren not think of it? Zhang Chunren should have thought of it, but since he had thought of it, why did he still do it? Could it be that he had a way to prevent this from happening? Even if Zhang Chunren wanted to harm him, he could also guarantee that the Shadow Alliance would absolutely not find trouble with him. Only by doing this, Zhang Chunren would have no worries. However, what should Zhang Chunren do to achieve this? Yi Tianhua thought for a long time, but still could not think of what Zhang Chunren should do to achieve this. To be able to harm him, and yet no one would find trouble with him. Du Wudai and An Hongda sat in the second carriage. The reason why the two of them sat in the same carriage was that they had the same view. They also wanted to sit together and take the opportunity to discuss this matter. As soon as the carriage started moving, An Hongda said with a wry smile, "Du Wudai, regarding today's date, what do you think?" Du Wudai sighed. "Although I don't know what Zhang Chunren is thinking, I have a feeling that this matter is not so simple." After listening to Du Wudai's words, An Hongda nodded. Brother Yi refused to listen to us and insisted on attending Zhang Chunren's date. "I'm afraid that this time, it will be dangerous." Du Wudai nodded and sighed. Brother Yi's actions may have many drawbacks, but we can't deny that what he said is reasonable. Speaking until here, Du Wudai's tone paused for a moment, but immediately after, he did not wait for An Hongda to answer his words, and continued to speak. "Think about it, if we really don't attend Zhang Chunren's date, I'm afraid that the final result will be the same as what Brother Yi said. Zhang Chunren's plan will fail, and he will definitely think of a new way to deal with us. At that time, he will be hiding in the dark, and we will have to be on guard against him. Wouldn't this be more tiring? Although there is a certain amount of danger in attending his date, but we can indeed know if Zhang Chunren has any malicious intentions towards us." After listening to Du Wudai's words, An Hongda nodded with a wry smile. "Du Wudai, what you said makes sense, and what Brother Yi said also makes sense. However, if Zhang Chunren really has any malicious intentions, then this time we will fall into his trap. At that time, even if we want to regret it, it will be too late." Du Wubao shook his head. This time, Zhang Chunren only invited Big Brother Yi alone. Maybe he didn't set a trap for Big Brother Yi alone. But now that there are 2 more of us, it's hard to say if his trap is big enough. Although the 3 of us are not top experts, if he wants to set up a trap to deal with the 3 of us, it will not be an easy task. And Hongda sighed. If Zhang Chunren has any malicious intentions, he will definitely set up a tight trap, making it impossible for us to hide even if we want to. Speaking until here, and Hongda's tone paused, and then he continued, even if what we said in the hotel is true, Zhang Chunren can invite experts to completely suppress us in terms of strength. He can also choose to buy some kind of hidden weapon and secretly attack us. The most powerful thing is that he can buy some kind of drug and silently drug all of us. In short, no matter which method he uses, it's impossible for us to guard against it. Because we don't know if Zhang Chunren has any ill intentions towards us, it's very easy for us to fall into his trap. Hearing in Hongda's words, Du Wudai pondered for a moment and then slowly shook his head. Zhang Chunren wants to find experts to suppress us. This is not an easy task. If he wants to suppress Big Brother E, then he only needs to find another expert, and 2 people can suppress Big Brother E. But now that there are 2 more of us, I am afraid he will need 6 experts. Let's not talk about whether Zhang Chunren can find 6 experts, just the trap he set up was originally for Big Brother E. Now that there are 2 more of us, will he think of this? After listening to Du Wudai's words, and Hongda nodded, Du Wudai, you are right. Zhang Chunren's original trap should be for Big Brother E. Even if he found some experts, the number will definitely not be many, at most 3 people. Now that there are 2 more of us, the people he found, even if their strength is still stronger than us, it is impossible to completely suppress us. If the 2 sides really fight, he will not be able to completely suppress us in terms of strength. Once we escape, then their plan will be completely known to us. At that time, it will be impossible for them to harm us again. Speaking until here, and Hongda's tone paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for Du Wudai to answer his words, he continued. But, Du Wudai, have you ever thought that if Zhang Chunren has already expected that the 2 of us will attend his date with Big Brother E, then won't he invite more experts to deal with us? After listening to Hongda's words, Du Wubao thought about it carefully and shook his head. It seems unlikely. It's not a problem to find more experts to deal with us, but where would he find more people? At this point, Du Wubao paused for a moment before continuing. To completely suppress the 3 of us, they would need at least 6 or 7 experts. Even if there were 6 or 7 experts, they wouldn't dare to guarantee that we wouldn't be able to escape. So, to completely suppress us, I am afraid that at least 10 experts are needed. Think about it, why would Zhang Chunren find 10 experts of our level to deal with us? More importantly, if he wants to find people to do this kind of thing, who can guarantee that there will be people willing to do it? Behind us is the Shadow Alliance. In terms of strength, they are definitely not inferior to the Secret Thunder Sect, or even stronger. In this situation, how many people are willing to help Zhang Chunren deal with us? Are they not afraid of the Shadow Alliance's revenge? More importantly, they have so many people to deal with us. What is their purpose? If it is just for the gold coins, how many gold coins can each of them get? This is not equal to what they have done. Since they can't get the same amount of gold coins, why would they do this kind of thing? That's why I'm suspecting why Zhang Chunren wants to set us up. After listening to Du Wudai's words, and Hongda's eyes suddenly lit up, and he said in surprise, Du Wudai, do you think that the Secret Thunder Sect wants to deal with our Shadow Alliance? Speaking up to here, and Hongda's tone paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for Du Wudai to answer his question, and continued to speak. If it's Tantric Thunder Sect that wants to deal with our Shadow Alliance, then this matter is easy to explain. Zhang Chunren is just a vanguard. He has 2 conditions. The first condition is 1 million gold coins, which might just be a cover. His real purpose is to get the second condition, which is 5 years of free information. If the Secret Thunder Sect wants to attack the Shadow Alliance, as long as they have 5 years of free information, they will definitely be able to do it. Once they use these 5 years of free information to damage the reputation of the Shadow Alliance, at that time, they will make a move to deal with us. At that time, wouldn't our Shadow Alliance suffer a great loss? Maybe the secret Thunder Sect's plan will really succeed and destroy our Shadow Alliance. After listening to Enhongda's words, Du Wudai couldn't help but frown. After a long while, he slowly said, "If the secret Thunder Sect wants to deal with our Shadow Alliance, they will use Zhang Chunren as a vanguard, and then use this opportunity to weaken the strength of our Shadow Alliance. Although this idea is possible, to really implement it is not an easy thing to do." Speaking up to here, Du Wudai paused for a moment before continuing. First of all, the cause of this matter is that Zhang Chunren's only son, Zhang Huoxing, was killed by the snow leopard. Then Zhang Chunren used this opportunity to propose 2 compensation conditions to us. But the problem is that Zhang Chunren only has one son. Is he willing to sacrifice his only son for the secret Thunder Sect? After listening to Du Wudai's words, Enhongda was stunned for a moment. Suddenly, his eyes lit up, and he said in surprise, "Du Wudai, what if Zhang Chunren's son, Zhang Huoxing, was not killed?" Speaking up to here, Enhongda paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for Du Wudai to answer his question, and continued speaking. "Du Wudai, think about it. If this matter is fake from the beginning, and Zhang Chunren's son, Zhang Huoxing, was not killed by the snow leopard, he said this just to find an excuse. After all, Zhang Chunren said that his son, Zhang Huoxing, had been killed, which was only his side of the story. None of us had seen it with our own eyes. Since he said that his son, Zhang Huoxing, was killed, we believed him. But if all this is fake, and Zhang Huoxing was not killed by the snow leopard, they said this just to find an excuse, and Zhang Chunren did not lose his only son. Then wouldn't this matter have a reasonable explanation?" Chapter 660. Enhongda sneered and said, "If Zhang Chunren's only son, Zhang Huoxing, was not killed by the snow leopard, then it is enough to prove that everything Zhang Chunren did was premeditated. His purpose was to harm us." Hearing Enhongda's words, Du Wudai could not help but frown. Enhongda's words made him feel enlightened. Zhang Chunren said that his only son, Zhang Huoxing, was killed by the snow leopard, but who had seen it? If no one had seen it, didn't that mean that this matter could be faked? If Zhang Chunren could even lie about this matter, then everything he had done could be fake. It was a scheme that he had set up long ago. Thinking of this, Du Wudai turned to look at Enhongda and said slowly, "Enhongda, do you have any evidence to prove Zhang Huoxing's matter?" After hearing Du Wudai's words, Enhongda smiled bitterly and shook his head. "No, I don't have any evidence. This is just my own guess. I'm not sure if it's true or not." At this point, Enhongda paused for a moment before continuing, however, "I'm guessing that this is most likely true. Zhang Chunren only has one son. He wouldn't joke around with his only son. It doesn't make sense for him to send his son to search for fire-soaring stones when he knows that Green Soaring Mountain is in danger. Even if he sent his son, Zhang Huoxing, to the mountain to look for flaming stones, he would definitely send enough experts to protect his son. It's impossible for him to let Zhang Huoxing be killed by the snow leopard so easily." Enhongda turned to look at Du Wudai and sneered. Although the snow leopard's speed is fast, if he really wanted to escape and had someone to cover for him, Zhang Huoxing would definitely have a chance to escape. But he didn't. Instead, he was killed by the snow leopard. This is really strange. After hearing Enhongda's words, Du Wudai nodded. "You're right. This matter is too illogical." At this point, Du Wubao paused for a moment before continuing, "I believe that no matter who it is, they would love their only son very much. Why would they let Zhang Huoxing take the risk alone? This is indeed a little too strange." Enhongda snorted coldly. "So I think that the news that Zhang Chunren sent us is fake. His only son, Zhang Huoxing, was not killed by the snow leopard. The reason why he said that must be to set us up. Other than this explanation, I really can't think of any other." Du Wudai nodded. "That is indeed the case. This matter is extremely strange. Perhaps Zhang Chunren had planned all of this long ago. Perhaps he had already thought of this plan when he received the news from the Green Tower Mountain. And Hongda sneered and nodded. That's right. Zhang Chunren must have thought of this plan long ago. It could even be said that he had already thought of this plan before he received the news from Qingling Mountain. At this point, An Hongda paused for a moment before continuing. Perhaps he had already thought of this plan long ago. Regardless of whether he received the news from Qingling Mountain or from somewhere else, he would still carry out this plan. After hearing An Hongda's words, Du Wudai sighed. Even if we know all of this, what's the use? Just like Brother Yi said, everything is just a guess. We can't be sure if it is true or false. Therefore, we have to participate in this date. At this point, Du Wudai paused for a moment before continuing. Only by participating in this date will we be able to find out if Zhang Chunren is what we think he is and if all of this is his plan. An Hongda sighed. Du Wudai, perhaps Zhang Chunren had already predicted all of this. He knows that whether or not this is his plan, we have to participate in this date. Du Wudai nodded. If that's the case, doesn't that mean that Zhang Chunren will definitely make a move on us during this date? After hearing Du Wudai's words, An Hongda nodded. If we didn't guess wrongly, Zhang Chunren will indeed make a move on our date this time. Because this is the best opportunity for him to make a move. Apart from this opportunity, he won't have a better chance. Du Wudai nodded. If that's the case, then we really have to be on our guard this time. Otherwise, Zhang Chunren might really succeed. At that time, we will be in deep trouble. An Hongda responded casually before frowning and pondering for a moment. Du Wudai, tell me, why do you think Zhang Chunren is doing this? At this point, An Hongda paused for a moment. However, he did not wait for Du Wubao's reply and continued to speak. I still can't figure it out. If all of this was planned by Zhang Chunren, then what is his goal? Is it the 1 million gold coins or his second condition, 5 years of free information? Du Wudai smiled bitterly. If it's for the 1 million gold coins, then this matter is relatively simple. We just need to raise 1 million gold coins for him, and this matter will be completely resolved. However, if it's for the second condition, 5 years of free information, then we have to think carefully about his intentions. We definitely can't agree to it so easily. After hearing Du Wudai's words, An Hongda nodded. Indeed. If it's only the 1 million gold coins, then it's still easy to resolve. However, if it's the second condition, then it's really difficult to resolve. Because in these 5 years of free information, there will be too many changes. If Zhang Chunren wants to use these 5 years of free information to harm us, it's simply a simple matter. Therefore, we have to be careful with this condition. Du Wudai sighed. What I'm worried about is that if Zhang Chunren insists on the second condition, then it won't be easy for us to resolve it. An Hongda heard and sneered. What's not easy to resolve? To be honest, Zhang Huoxing's matter this time has nothing to do with us. Even if we want to compensate him, it's only a matter of morality. But in essence, we don't need to bear any compensation. Du Wudai nodded. You're right. Things should be like this. We didn't sell him any information about the snow leopard. Even if something happens, it's definitely not related to us. Even if we don't compensate him, others won't say anything about us. And Hongda smiled bitterly and nodded. If it wasn't for Big Brother Yi's insistence, I wouldn't even go on this date. Why should I care about him? Du Wudai nodded. Things should be like this. If it has nothing to do with us, why should we participate in his date? If this matter spreads out, then we can't do business anymore. As long as there's a problem with the information we sold, even if the problem isn't our own problem, they will still come to us for compensation. Then wouldn't we be in trouble? No matter how much gold we have, it won't be enough to compensate. After hearing Du Wudai's words, An Hongda sighed. This is also the purpose of me and Big Brother Yi participating in this date. If I was there and saw this situation, I would definitely stop Big Brother E and not let him do this kind of thing, so as to avoid trouble in the future. Du Wudai smiled and nodded. This time, with the two of us and Big Brother E participating in this date, even if Zhang Chunren has some tricks up his sleeve, I believe he won't be able to hide it from our eyes. At that time, we only need to expose Zhang Chunren's tricks, and Big Brother E won't be fooled. And Hongda nodded. Du Wudai, take a guess. If Zhang Chunren is really scheming against us, then what is his purpose? Du Wudai smiled and shook his head. How can I guess this? If I can really guess it, then wouldn't we have a way to deal with Zhang Chunren? And Hongda nodded and said with some doubts. My guess is that Zhang Hongda is definitely not doing this for the 1 million gold coins. Speaking until here, and Hongda's tone paused. But immediately after, he didn't wait for Du Wudai to answer his question and continued. If I'm not wrong, his purpose should be the second condition, which is the 5 years of free information that he mentioned. Du Wudai nodded his head. That's right. If Zhang Chunren had made such a big plan just for that 1 million gold coins, it would indeed be somewhat inconceivable. It seems that his plan is mostly centered around the second condition. And Hongda sneered. Now that we have already guessed his plan, when we participate in the date later, as long as we don't agree to his second condition, no matter what ability he has, he won't be able to do anything to us. Hearing in Hongda's words, Du Wudai suddenly remembered the matter with water spirit and fire spirit. He couldn't help but say, and Hongda, what we should pay attention to now is not his second condition, but whether Zhang Chunren will make a move against us. Speaking until here, Du Wudai paused for a moment before continuing. Perhaps Zhang Chunren's ultimate goal is the second condition that he told us. But I believe that he should be able to guess that we will definitely not agree to his condition. So, he will definitely think of a way to make us agree to his condition. Hearing Du Wudai's words, and Hongda sneered. If we don't agree, what can he do to us? Don't forget, there are 3 of us, and he is only one person. Don't tell me that he can use himself to threaten the 3 of us? Isn't that ridiculous? Du Wudai smiled bitterly and shook his head. If Zhang Chunren wants to deal with us, he will definitely not go alone. Just like what we said just now, perhaps his initial goal was only Big Brother E, but I can be sure that he will definitely not go alone. Maybe he will find 2 or 3 experts to go with him, so that he can completely suppress Big Brother E in terms of strength and achieve his goal. If that's the case, then we don't have the advantage in terms of numbers, and we might even be at a disadvantage. And Hongda waved his hand indifferently. Even if the 3 of them deal with the 3 of us, so what? Do you think that there are many people in the South region who can beat us? When Du Wubao heard this, he sighed. What I'm worried about is not that there are only 3 of them. What I'm worried about is that Zhang Chunren had long planned for this matter. He had even calculated that you would come, so he would find even more experts to deal with you. Speaking up to this point, Du Wubao paused for a moment before continuing. Who knows, Zhang Chunren might have not only schemed against you, but he might have schemed against me as well. He might have found more experts to deal with the 3 of us. Du Wudai turned to look at An Hongda and said with a smile, An Hongda, if this is the case, I'm afraid that as soon as we arrive at the date, we will be surrounded by their people. At that time, it will be too late for us to escape. After hearing Du Wudai's words, An Hongda shook his head indifferently and said with a sneer, Du Wudai, you're right. Do you think that in the South region, there are many people who surpass us in martial arts? Speaking of this, An Hongda paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for Du Wudai to answer him. It's not that I'm looking down on Zhang Chunren. He doesn't need to find more than 10 experts. Even if he can find 5 experts, he's already very powerful. Du Wudai shook his head. An Hongda, I advise you not to be too careless. If Zhang Chunren wants to find a few experts, it shouldn't take much effort. Speaking of this, Du Wudai paused for a moment before continuing. Think about it. In the South region, just the Secret Thunder sect alone has many experts. If he calls all these experts over, it will be a great threat to us. We must not be careless. After hearing Du Wudai's words, An Hongda could not help but frown. There are indeed many experts in the Secret Thunder sect, but will Zhang Chunren really find the experts of the Secret Thunder sect to do this kind of thing? If he finds the experts of the Secret Thunder sect, will others help him if he tells them about this matter? I know that Zhang Chunren is being unreasonable in this matter. Even if he is not afraid of offending the Shadow Alliance, are other people not afraid? After all, everyone still has to stay in the South region. If they offend the Shadow Alliance and make another enemy, what good will it do them? Speaking of this, An Hongda paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for Du Wudai to answer his question. So, I think that the experts of the Secret Thunder sect will not necessarily help Zhang Chunren. If Zhang Chunren wants to find someone to help, he will only find some trustworthy people. These people are likely to help him. Among the people Zhang Chunren trusts, are there really more than a dozen experts? I don't think so. After hearing An Hongda's words, Du Wudai could not help but nod. An Hongda, what you said makes sense. Even if Zhang Chunren is not afraid of offending us, I think that not everyone is not afraid of offending us. According to this, there should not be many experts in the Secret Thunder sect who can help him. Speaking of this, Du Wudai paused for a moment before continuing, but even if there are not many, it is still a huge threat to us. Chapter 661. Du Wubao sighed. We don't know who Zhang Chunren will invite this time. Du Wubao paused for a moment before continuing, however, the possibility of Tantric Thunder sect sending help is very high. Because we get along with each other all the time, our relationship is naturally very good. Just like us and Brother E, as long as we hear that Brother E is in trouble, we will definitely come to help. Tantric Thunder sect's situation is the same as ours. Maybe someone will come to help Zhang Chunren. After listening to Du Wubao's words, An Hongda frowned. If they help Zhang Chunren, aren't they afraid of offending the Shadow Alliance? Du Wubao shook his head with a wry smile. If Zhang Chunren has really thought of a way to deal with us, I believe no one will know that it was them who did this. An Hongda shook his head. No, Brother E once said that he came to Zhang Chunren's date. Many people know about it. Speaking of this, An Hongda paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for Du Wubao to answer his question, he continued. If something happens to us today, the first person to be suspected will definitely be Zhang Chunren. As long as there is a detailed investigation, it will definitely be Zhang Chunren who did it. So, I think Zhang Chunren won't be so stupid to not think of this. Du Wubao shook his head gently. If what you said is true, then we are safe today. After listening to Du Wubao's words, An Hongda shook his head with a wry smile. Although it is like that, but in my heart I still feel a little uneasy, as if something bad is going to happen. Du Wubao nodded. I think Zhang Chunren is definitely up to no good. Maybe this time, he will make a move on us. At this point, Du Wubao paused. His eyes were filled with doubt as he continued. But, if Zhang Chunren wanted to make a move on us, what kind of method would he use to avoid suspicion from others? An Hongda shook his head with a wry smile. This is really hard to guess. Since many people know that we came to Zhang Chunren's date, then if something happens to us during the date, the person who will be suspected will naturally be Zhang Chunren. This point, no matter how Zhang Chunren quibbles, it is impossible to reverse. Since that's the case, what should Zhang Chunren do to avoid suspicion? Du Wubao smiled bitterly and said, according to what we just said, if Zhang Chunren doesn't want to be suspected by others, then he can only choose not to take action. Since we are fine, then they naturally won't be suspected. An Hongda sighed. But if Zhang Chunren doesn't make a move, then wouldn't it be meaningless for him to invite us here? Saying this, Anhongda paused as he turned around and looked at Du Wudai before continuing. If this date is meaningless, why would Zhang Chunren invite us here? If he only wants gold coins, wouldn't it be simpler for him to find us directly? Why would he make such a simple thing so complicated? Du Wubao smiled bitterly and shook his head. If you want to know the truth, it seems like you can only ask Zhang Chunren himself. At this point, Du Wubao paused for a moment. However, he didn't wait for Anhongda to reply and continued to speak. Seems like Big Brother E also thinks so. Since you can't figure it out, then don't think about it anymore. Just ask Zhang Chunren directly, then wouldn't you know the truth? After listening to Du Wudai's words, Anhongda sighed. Du Wudai, this is what I'm most worried about. Since Zhang Chunren invited us here, then he must have come prepared. If he really thought of a way to deal with us, then wouldn't it be terrible? At this point, Anhongda paused for a moment. However, he did not wait for Du Wubao's reply and continued to speak. Du Wudai, think about it. Maybe Zhang Chunren had already predicted this and knew that we would definitely come, so he had already thought of this time to deal with us. Du Wudai sighed. The most important thing is, I really don't understand. Once Zhang Chunren takes action on this date, what should he do to dispel the suspicion of others? Anhongda smiled bitterly and shook his head. The problem you mentioned is really hard to guess. It's just like how we can't guess what method he's going to use to deal with us. Du Wudai shook his head. Anhongda, I suddenly thought of a problem. Anhongda nodded. What problem? Du Wudai turned around and said in a deep voice. We just said that Zhang Chunren is the Vice Hall Master of the Tantric Thunder Sect, but we forgot an important problem. At this point, Du Wudai paused for a moment before continuing. That is the Tantric Thunder Sect. The Tantric Thunder Sect is a place that produces firearms. They are most famous for the Sky Tremor Bomb. We forgot about the Sky Tremor Bomb. Sky Tremor Bomb. After hearing this name, Anhongda sighed. Indeed, we actually forgot such an important thing. Du Wudai nodded. The Sky Tremor Bomb is very powerful. Within a radius of 5 meters, it will affect almost everything. At this point, Du Wudai paused and sighed before continuing. If Zhang Chunren uses the Sky Tremor Bomb to deal with us, I'm afraid it will be really hard for us to avoid it. After hearing Du Wudai's words, Anhongda's expression changed. Du Wudai, you're saying that Zhang Chunren will use the Sky Tremor Bomb to deal with me? Du Wudai nodded. Zhang Chunren is the Vice Hall Master of the Tantric Thunder Sect. He definitely has the authority to use the Sky Tremor Bomb. If he wants to use the Sky Tremor Bomb to deal with us, it's very possible. After hearing Du Wudai's words, Anhongda was stunned for a moment. His expression became more and more unsightly. Du Wudai, if Zhang Chunren really uses the Sky Tremor Bomb to deal with us, do you have any good ideas to deal with him? Du Wudai smiled bitterly and shook his head. The Sky Tremor Bomb is very powerful. The most important thing is that the Sky Tremor Bomb isn't big. If Zhang Chunren deliberately hides the Sky Tremor Bomb, we won't be able to discover it. This also means that he can catch us off guard. If we want to avoid the attack of the Sky Tremor Bomb, it's almost impossible. After hearing Du Wudai's words, Anhongda sighed. If that's the case, as long as Zhang Chunren has 10 Sky Tremor Bombs, even if he doesn't have any other helpers, I'm afraid we won't be his match. Du Wudai shook his head. Although the Sky Tremor Bomb is very powerful, it can still be used as a surprise attack. It can also be used against ordinary people. However, if it wants to deal with the few of us, I'm afraid it's impossible. At this point, Du Wubao paused for a moment. However, he did not wait for Anhongda's reply and continued to speak. If we discover that Zhang Chunren wants to use the Sky Tremor Bomb to deal with us, we only need to avoid it. Even if the Sky Tremor Bomb is very powerful, I'm afraid it won't cause any harm to us. Du Wudai turned his head to look at An Hongda and asked with a smile, An Hongda, do you think that if Zhang Chunren throws the sky tremor bomb at you, you won't be able to dodge it? After hearing Du Wudai's words, An Hongda shook his head and smiled bitterly. If Zhang Chunren really throws the sky tremor bomb at us, I believe any one of the three of us can dodge it. However, what I'm most afraid of is not Zhang Chunren throwing the sky tremor bomb at us, but that he will use other methods to deal with us. At this point, An Hongda paused for a moment. However, he did not wait for Du Wubao's reply and continued to speak. Du Wudai, think about it. If Zhang Chunren uses other methods, for example, if he buries the sky tremor bomb in the ground beforehand, as long as we pass by the place where he buries it, the sky tremor bomb will immediately explode. At this time, even if we want to dodge it, I'm afraid it won't be that easy, right? Moreover, there are many other methods. Zhang Chunren can hide the sky tremor bomb, but we don't know where it is hidden. It won't be easy to dodge the attack of the sky formation bomb. After saying this, An Hongda paused for a moment before continuing. Who knows, when we are on a date with Zhang Chunren, we might unknowingly be hit by his sky tremor bomb. After hearing An Hongda's words, Du Wudai sighed. If Zhang Chunren really wants to use the sky tremor bomb to deal with us, it will be really hard for us to dodge it. An Hongda suddenly opened his mouth and said, Du Wudai, do you think that Zhang Chunren chose this place to go on a date with us because of this reason? After saying this, An Hongda paused for a moment. However, he didn't wait for Du Wudai to reply and continued. The reason why Zhang Chunren chose this desolate place instead of going home to look for us, doesn't this mean that he originally planned to set up the sky tremor bomb in this desolate mountain and then use it to deal with us? After hearing An Hongda's words, Du Wudai nodded his head. What you said is really possible. Zhang Chunren chose this place because, on one hand, no one would be aware of it. On the other hand, no one would know how many sky tremor bombs he wanted to set up. If he wants to deal with us, isn't this the best place? After saying this, Du Wudai thought of this possibility and immediately broke out in cold sweat. If Zhang Chunren set up a large number of sky tremor bombs at the place where they were meeting, and they didn't know where the sky tremor bombs were set up, it was really possible that they would be hit by the sky tremor bombs. Although Du Wudai had never seen how powerful the sky tremor bomb was, he had heard of it. Everyone who had seen the power of the sky tremor bomb would have lingering fears. When they talked about the sky tremor bomb, they would be shocked. After hearing about the power of the sky tremor bomb from others, Du Wudai was sure that even if he stepped on the sky tremor bomb, he wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. He might even be blown to pieces. When Du Wudai thought of this, he turned his head to look at An Hongda. However, he saw that An Hongda's face was also pale as he looked at him. Their eyes met, and then they both smiled bitterly and shook their heads at the same time. An Hongda sighed. If Zhang Chunren really wants to use the sky tremor bomb to deal with us here, then I'm afraid we won't have any chance at all. We will all be hit by the sky tremor bombs, and no one will be able to escape. Du Wudai smiled bitterly and nodded his head. That's true. If we see the sky tremor bomb, we still have a way to dodge it. With our martial arts, it will be very difficult for Zhang Chunren to hit us. However, if he hides in advance and hides in our path, then even if we want to dodge, I'm afraid we won't have any chance. An Hongda sighed. If Zhang Chunren really set up the sky tremor bomb in advance, then won't we be hit by the sky tremor bomb when we join his date? Hearing An Hongda's question, Du Wudai didn't answer immediately. This was because he was thinking rapidly in his heart. If Zhang Chunren really set up the sky tremor bomb in their path, then how confident were they that they would be able to dodge the sky tremor bomb's attack? Du Wudai was silent for a while before he slowly shook his head. If Zhang Chunren really set up the sky tremor bomb in our path, then I'm afraid we won't have any chance to dodge the sky tremor bomb's attack. After hearing Du Wudai's words, An Hongda sighed. It seems that we still need to tell Big Brother about this. We definitely can't join Zhang Chunren's date today. Otherwise, I'm afraid we'll be schemed against by Zhang Chunren. At that time, we'll really be finished. Du Wudai smiled bitterly and shook his head. If Big Brother Yi is willing to listen to us, we shouldn't go now. Unfortunately, he won't listen to us. Even if he knows about the sky tremor bomb, I'm afraid he'll still join Zhang Chunren's date. Speaking until here, Du Wudai's tone paused. However, he didn't wait for An Hongda to answer his question and continued. Because Big Brother Yi doesn't believe that he and Zhang Chunren have no fate or enmity. Why would Zhang Chunren set him up? This is something he can't imagine. In order to find out the truth, Big Brother Yi will definitely join this date. Even if Zhang Chunren really has a plan to deal with me, he will still join this date. After hearing Du Wudai's words, An Hongda sighed. Actually, Big Brother Yi is right. Zhang Chunren has no fate or enmity with us. Why would he set us up? He even risked offending the Shadow Alliance to frame us. Could it be that there's a reason we don't know? Du Wudai smiled bitterly and nodded. It seems so. Otherwise, why would Zhang Chunren do this? An Hongda sighed. It's too dangerous for us to join Zhang Chunren's date. If he uses the sky tremor bomb against us, then we'll definitely fall into his trap. Speaking until here, An Hongda paused for a moment before continuing. Think about it. We know that Zhang Chunren is going to use the sky tremor bomb against us, but we still have to join his date. Isn't this a little too sad? Du Wudai smiled bitterly and nodded. Not only is it sad, but it's also very helpless. Seeing the powerful sky tremor bomb waiting for us, we still have to join this date. It's really very helpless. After hearing Du Wudai's words, An Hongda sighed. So, we must persuade Big Brother Yi not to join this date. Chapter 662. After hearing An Hongda's words, Du Wudai nodded. Just as he was about to speak, his eyes suddenly lit up. I remember now. Zhang Chunren can't possibly use the sky tremor bomb to deal with us. After hearing Du Wudai's words, An Hongda was immediately overjoyed. He asked in surprise, Du Wudai, what's the matter? Why can't Zhang Chunren use the sky tremor bomb to deal with us? Du Wudai turned to look at An Hongda and sneered. We know that the sky tremor bomb of the Tanti sect is extremely powerful. I believe that many people know its name. If the few of us were to be harmed by the heaven-shaking thunder, then think about it, would anyone know? After hearing Du Wudai's words, An Hongda frowned and said slowly, the scene of the explosion of the sky tremor bomb will definitely be discovered by others. Naturally, they will be able to recognize the traces left by the sky tremor bomb. At that time, I believe that everyone will suspect Zhang Chunren. At that time, Zhang Chunren won't be able to defend himself. Although he used the sky tremor bomb to kill us, he himself, I'm afraid that he won't be able to escape the punishment of the Shadow League. Du Wudai smiled and nodded. If we can think of this, Zhang Chunren should be able to think of this too. If he uses the sky tremor bomb of the Tanti sect, it will make others suspect him even more. Although he can use the power of the sky tremor bomb to kill us, he can't escape at the same time. And Hongda smiled and said, if it's like this, Zhang Chunren definitely won't dare to use the sky tremor bomb to deal with me. Because as long as others see the traces left by the sky tremor bomb, they will definitely think that it was done by him. Because we came here to meet him. Du Wudai nodded. It's precisely because the sky tremor bomb is so powerful that it's easier to leave traces. Therefore, Zhang Chunren shouldn't be so stupid to use it. After hearing Du Wudai's words, An Hongda smiled and nodded. Then we have one less threat. Speaking of this, An Hongda paused for a while before continuing. It's still a huge threat. Du Wudai smiled and nodded. It seems that Zhang Chunren won't take the risk to deal with us. And Hongda was about to nod when he suddenly sighed. Even if Zhang Chunren doesn't use the heaven-shocking thunder to deal with us, it's still a huge threat to us. At this point, An Hongda paused for a moment before continuing. Just like what we just said, if he has any powerful hidden weapons, it will still be difficult for us to avoid them. What's more, he might have some kind of medicine that makes it even harder for us to guard against. This is also a huge threat to us. After hearing in Hongda's words, Du Wubao sighed, there are many powerful hidden weapons that make it impossible for one to hide. Even if one wanted to dodge, it would be too late. If Zhang Chunren really has such a concealed weapon, to us, its power is not inferior to the heaven-shaking thunder. And Hongda smiled bitterly and said, "That's right, there are many concealed weapons. Not only are they launched very fast, but they are also very small. There's almost no sound of them breaking through the air. This kind of concealed weapon is very difficult to dodge. As long as one is not careful, one will be hit by this kind of concealed weapon." Speaking of this, and Hongda paused for a moment and sighed before continuing, the most important thing is that these small concealed weapons are often coated with poison. As long as we are hit by a concealed weapon, I'm afraid we won't be able to retaliate. Du Wudai sighed. The most important thing is that we are not prepared at all before this. We have never thought that Zhang Chunren would set us up. And Hongda smiled bitterly and said, "If we had thought of it, then wouldn't we have been prepared long ago? Why would we wait until now to worry?" Du Wudai sighed. Even if we are worried, we must participate in this date. Just like what Brother Yi said, we must find out if Zhang Chunren has any evil intentions towards us. If Zhang Chunren really has evil intentions towards us, then we will escape immediately and wait for an opportunity to take revenge on him. After hearing Du Wudai's words, and Hongda smiled bitterly and shook his head, "Du Wudai, what I am worried about is that even if we know that Zhang Chunren has evil intentions towards us, we will still fall into his trap. By that time, won't it be too late to regret?" Du Wudai turned his head to look at An Hongda and sighed. "Now that things have come to this, we can only take one step at a time. When we reach the rendezvous point with Zhang Chunren, we must be careful and not fall into his trap." And Hongda smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Du Wudai, all of us understand this principle. However, since Zhang Chunren has already made preparations, I am afraid that he has already calculated everything about us. It is really too difficult for us to avoid his trap." Du Wudai sighed. "Now I only hope that Zhang Chunren's plan is not so powerful that we can all return safely." The carriage continued to move forward and soon, they arrived at a place not far from their date. Yi Tianhua called for the carriage to stop and alighted. After sending the carriage away, he saw Du Wudai and An Hongda in front of him, and said softly, "The mountain in front is the location of the date with Zhang Chunren. From now on, all of us must be careful." An Hongda nodded. "Don't worry, brother, we will be careful." Hearing this, Yi Tianhua turned to look at Du Wudai. "Du Wudai, you must be careful too. This time is unusual. If Zhang Chunren has evil intentions towards us, I am afraid that we will be in great danger." Hearing Yi Tianhua's words, Du Wudai nodded. After hesitating for a moment, he said slowly, "Brother Yi, An Hongda and I were discussing this matter in the carriage just now." Speaking until here, Du Wudai paused for a moment before continuing, "Brother Yi, Zhang Chunren is the secret Thunder Sect's deputy hall master. If I am not wrong, he might have the Sky Tremor Bomb. Brother Yi, you must be careful too." Sky Tremor Bomb. After hearing Du Wudai's words, Yi Tianhua's expression changed greatly. Just as he was about to speak, An Hongda suddenly spoke. "Brother Yi, you must be careful indeed. If Zhang Chunren buries the Sky Tremor Bomb on our path, I am afraid that we will definitely step on the Sky Tremor Bomb. At that time, we will be in trouble." Hearing An Hongda's words, Yi Tianhua subconsciously turned to look at the path leading to the top of the mountain. He was stunned for a moment before slowly shaking his head. "We have no enmity with Zhang Chunren. Is he really willing to put in so much effort to harm us?" And Hongda smiled bitterly and nodded. "Brother Yi, think about it. If Zhang Chunren did not want to harm us, why would he choose such a remote place? If Zhang Chunren really just wants our compensation, he doesn't need to invite us to this barren mountain. Even a hotel would be better than here. Hearing in Hongda's words, Yi Tianhua clenched his teeth. And Hongda, I know you are right. But since things have come to this, we can only attend Zhang Chunren's date. Speaking until here, Yi Tianhua paused for a moment before continuing. If we do not attend his date, I am afraid that we will never know what Zhang Chunren wants to do. Du Wudai nodded. Brother Li's words are reasonable. If we do not meet Zhang Chunren and explain this matter clearly, if he really has evil intentions and is secretly trying to harm us, I am afraid it will be harder for us to guard against it. And Hongda shook his head and pointed to the path leading to the mountain peak. He said coldly, if Zhang Chunren buries the sky tremor grenades on this path, what should we do? Speaking until here, and Hongda paused for a moment. But immediately after, he did not wait for Yi Tianhua to answer his question and continued speaking. Among the three of us, no matter who steps on the sky tremor grenades, I am afraid that we will not be able to escape the fate of death. In this kind of crisis, we still want to believe that Zhang Chunren is a good person. Isn't this too ridiculous? Hearing in Hongda's words, Du Wudai looked at the path leading to the mountain peak. For no reason, he suddenly felt a chill in his heart. It was as if this path was already filled with sky tremor grenades. As long as they stepped on this path, the sky tremor grenades would immediately explode. Yi Tianhua hesitated for a moment before slowly saying, since we suspect that Zhang Chunren has already set up sky tremor grenades on the path, then we will not take the path. Speaking until here, Yi Tianhua pointed to the forest beside the path and said with a smile, I think that as long as we go up the mountain from the forest beside the path, Zhang Chunren will definitely not be able to do anything to us. Du Wudai sighed. This is the only way now. For safety's sake, we will all go up the mountain from the forest. After saying this, Du Wudai turned to look at Shadowless and the other two. When we go up the mountain later, you guys be careful too. Don't wander around in case you step on the sky tremor grenades. Hearing Du Wudai's words, Shadowless hesitated for a moment before saying softly, Master, since it is so dangerous up the mountain, I think that we should not go. What do you think? Du Wudai smiled bitterly and shook his head. No, since Brother Yi has already said so, even if there are too many dangers up the mountain, we must still go. Shadowless looked at the mountain and said softly, Master, I think that we should just hide here. If Zhang Chunren appears, we can take him down and ask him about the situation. That should not be a problem, right? Hearing Shadowless's words, Du Wudai was stunned for a moment before shaking his head with a bitter smile. But what if Zhang Chunren has already gone up the mountain? Then we will not be able to wait for him. Shadowless shook his head. Even if Zhang Chunren has already gone up the mountain, as long as we are patient, Zhang Chunren will definitely come down the mountain. At that time we can still catch him. Hearing Shadowless's words, Du Wudai's eyes suddenly brightened. He quickly walked to Yi Tianhua's side and said with a smile, Brother Yi, why don't we wait for Zhang Chunren here? If he appears, we can catch him and ask him clearly. If he has already gone up the mountain, then we will wait for him to come down the mountain and ask him clearly. What do you think? After hearing Du Wudai's words, before Yi Tianhua could say anything, and Hongda clapped his hands and said, Good, as long as we do not go to the place that Zhang Chunren has already set up, he will definitely not be able to do anything to us. Du Wudai, your idea is not bad. Brother Yi, we will wait here. As long as Zhang Chunren appears, everything will be clear. Hearing the two's words, Yi Tianhua hesitated for a moment before slowly shaking his head. Everything is just our guess. We can't be sure of the truth of the matter. If Zhang Chunren does not have any ill intentions and only wants to ask for compensation from us, then wouldn't we be breaking our promise by doing this? We will be ridiculed by the world. Hearing Yi Tianhua's words, and Hongda immediately panicked and hurriedly said, "Big brother Yi, we can't be careless. Like you said, if Zhang Chunren doesn't have any evil intentions, then we're just breaking our promise. But if Zhang Chunren does have ill intentions towards us, and set up a large number of sky tremors on the mountain or use other methods to deal with us, then wouldn't we be in danger?" Yi Tianhua shook his head. Although the three of us aren't considered top-notch martial arts experts in South County, it's definitely not that easy to suppress the three of us at the same time. Maybe Zhang Chunren set up sky tremors on the mountain, but I think as long as we are careful, he should not be able to hurt us. Speaking of this, Yi Tianhua paused for a moment before continuing, so I have decided that we still have to go to the mountain to attend Zhang Chunren's date. Hearing Yi Tianhua's words, and Hongda sighed, "Brother Yi, since you said so, I have nothing to say." Speaking of this, and Hongda paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for Yi Tianhua to answer him. "But after we go up the mountain, we must be careful. We must not fall into Zhang Chunren's trap, or it will be too late to regret." Hearing in Hongda's words, Yi Tianhua nodded, looked at the sky, and said with a smile, "It's getting late, and Zhang Chunren has not come for so long. Maybe he has already gone up the mountain to wait for us. Let's hurry up and go up the mountain." As he spoke, Yi Tianhua walked up the mountain. And Hongda sighed, "Brother Yi, Zhang Chunren came here so early. I think he must want to set up his plan in advance to deal with us later." Yi Tianhua acted as if he did not hear in Hongda's words. He only sighed silently and did not stop walking toward the forest beside the path. Looking at Yi Tianhua's departing figure, and Hongda sighed. He turned to Du Wubao and said with a bitter smile, "Du Wudai, we must be careful when we go up the mountain this time." Du Wudai nodded, "You be careful too." After saying this, the two chased after Yi Tianhua. Shadowless and the other two who fell behind looked at the backs of the three people in front of them. They looked at each other and could not help but sigh at the same time. Shadowless said slowly, "It seems that we must attend today's date." Yi Tianhua's disciple, Lu Chuan, said with a bitter smile, "No matter what, even if we don't want to go, Master and the others are going. We have to go." And Hongda's disciple, Sima Xing, spat on the ground and said angrily, "This hateful Zhang Chunren. We only sold him information about the Flaming Stone, but he blamed Zhang Huasheng's incident on us. This is unreasonable." Chapter 663. After hearing Sima Xing's words, Lu Chuan sighed, "This Zhang Chunren, I don't know what he wants to do." Sima Xing snorted and pointed at the mountain in front of them. "What does he want to do? If he wanted to do something good, would he need to invite us here?" At this point, Sima Xing paused for a moment. However, he did not wait for Lu Chuan's reply and continued to speak. "So I'm sure that Zhang Chunren doesn't have any good intentions. He must be plotting against us." Shadowless sighed, "So what if he wants to plot against us? Master and the others have already agreed to go up the mountain. What can we, as disciples, do?" Lu Chuan laughed bitterly. "Shadowless is right. Since Master and the others have already gone up the mountain, even if we know there's danger, we have to go up the mountain." Sima Xing sighed, "If that's the case, then let's go. If we continue talking, we'll only get angry, but there's nothing we can do." After hearing Sima Xing's words, Shadowless and Lu Chuan sighed at the same time. The three of them walked down the official road and chased after the three people in front of them. Yi Tianhua led the way, following the forest beside the small path and slowly walking up the mountain. And Hongda and Du Wudai's faces were filled with nervousness. They kept looking around for any movements, fearing that Zhang Chunren had set up a trap and they would fall into his ambush. This mountain wasn't very tall, only a few 100 meters or so. The trees on the mountain were thriving. Other than a few small paths, there were trees of different sizes. Although Yi Tianhua's face was calm, he was very nervous. What An Hongda and Du Wudai said was not without reason. However, even if it was reasonable, he had to participate in this date. Yi Tianhua was a straightforward person. He didn't like to hide things in his heart, especially things like this. He didn't want to guess whether Zhang Chunren was a good person or a bad person. He just wanted to see Zhang Chunren and get a direct answer. He felt that this was better than anything else. So no matter how scary An Hongda and Du Wudai's words were, Yi Tianhua decided to go up the mountain to see Zhang Chunren and get to the bottom of this matter. Everyone knew martial arts, so they didn't need to rest while climbing a small hill that was a few hundred meters high. Although everyone seemed to be walking slowly, they were actually walking much faster than ordinary people. It didn't take long for Yi Tianhua, who was walking at the front, to suddenly see the light in front of him. They had arrived at the top of the mountain. At the top of the hill there was a large open space. On the other side of the open space there were a few people standing there and watching. The person standing in the middle was the main character of this date, Zhang Chunren. Zhang Chunren was a middle-aged man. Although his body was not in shape and he was not tall, he looked very capable. His appearance could be considered decent, but his pair of slightly slender eyes would occasionally flash a cold light, making people involuntarily think that he was a shrewd person. On Zhang Chunren's left was an old man with white hair. This person was the hall master of the secret Thunder Sect's South County Hall, Shuizhijing. On the other side of Zhang Chunren stood two burly middle-aged men. These two people were both protectors of the secret Thunder Sect's South County Hall. The slightly taller one was called Lu Hushan, and the other was called Yuan Weiqing. Standing behind Zhang Chunren was a thin old man. He was dressed in black clothes that wrapped him tightly. Even his face was covered by a large hood, making him look even more mysterious. In the forest behind the old man there were more than 10 men standing. Looking at their clothes, they should be disciples of the secret Thunder Sect. Yi Tianhua saw Zhang Chunren across the open space and was about to go forward to greet him, but he was pulled back by An Hongda behind him. "Big brother Yi, you have to be careful." Yi Tianhua nodded and then walked towards Zhang Chunren. An Hongda and Du Wudai looked at each other and then nervously chased after him. Yi Tianhua came to the middle of the open space and looked at Zhang Chunren, who was standing at the edge. He cupped his fists and said, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, I have come to keep the appointment." Hearing Yi Tianhua's words, Zhang Chunren's cold face suddenly flashed with a trace of sadness. "Yi Tianhua, you're finally here." Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren's tone paused for a moment before he continued, "I thought you didn't dare to come." Yi Tianhua smiled and shook his head. "How could that be? Why wouldn't I come? The reason I didn't come is because it's not time yet. Look at the sky. I'm afraid it's not time yet. You should be the one who came early." As soon as Yi Tianhua's voice fell, before Zhang Chunren could speak, An Hongda suddenly asked loudly, "Zhang Chunren, let me ask you, why did you come so early?" Hearing this, Zhang Chunren coldly glanced at An Hongda and then lightly said, "Why should I come early? Do I have to tell you?" An Hongda was choked by Zhang Chunren's words. His face suddenly changed and he was about to get angry, but he was pulled back by Du Wudai. Du Wudai pulled An Hongda and said in a low voice, "Let's see what Zhang Chunren wants to do first, then talk." An Hongda fiercely glared at Zhang Chunren, then turned his head away and no longer looked at him. However, Zhang Chunren acted as if nothing had happened and asked indifferently, "Yi Tianhua, how do you plan to compensate for my son?" Hearing this, Yi Tianhua hurriedly waved his hand and said solemnly, "Deputy Hall Master Zhang, I'm also very sad about your son's situation, but this has nothing to do with the Shadow Alliance. When you came to buy information, you only bought the news of the Flaming Stone on Green Tower Mountain, not the news of the Snow Leopard. I'm also very sad that your son met with such an accident, but this really has nothing to do with us." Zhang Chunren sneered, Since you know about the flaming stone on Green Tower Mountain, you must know about the snow leopard on Green Tower Mountain. Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren paused, gritted his teeth and continued, since you know about the snow leopard on Green Tower Mountain, although we didn't buy this information, you didn't even warn us? After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yi Tianhua hurriedly waved his hand. Deputy Hall Master Zhang, the snow leopard comes and goes without a trace. When we were looking for the flaming stone, we didn't see the snow leopard. If we had seen it, we would have warned you to be careful. Zhang Chunren sneered and shook his head. Yi Tianhua, you said you didn't see it, so you didn't see it. Do you think I'll believe you? Yi Tianhua smiled bitterly and shook his head. Deputy Hall Master Zhang, I know you're very sad, but we really didn't know about this. Zhang Chunren wanted to say more, but Yuan Weiqing suddenly said, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, I think you'd better stop. No matter what you say, they won't admit it. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing turned to look at Yi Tianhua and said loudly, This time, we're not here to talk about the snow leopard. We're here to talk about how you're going to compensate us. LV Hushan also said loudly, That's right. You'd better think about how you're going to compensate us. This time, without waiting for Yi Tianhua to speak, and Hongda spoke first, Since it's not our fault, why should we compensate you? Yuan Weiqing sneered, So, you're here today because you don't want to compensate us. And Hongda shook his head, We're very sad about this, but it's not our fault. It's your own carelessness. You didn't check the situation clearly in advance, and that's why such a big thing happened. Therefore, we can only express our sympathy, but we will never compensate you. After hearing in Hongda's words, Zhang Chunren suddenly shouted, Since you said so, I'll kill your son and let you have a taste of this pain. Then we'll be even. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, and Hongda's face suddenly changed. He said angrily, Zhang Chunren, your son was killed by the snow leopard. What does it have to do with us? Why are you cursing me? Zhang Chunren heard this and shouted sternly, If you had warned us, how could this have happened? In the end, it's your irresponsibility. Yuan Weiqing sneered and said, I suddenly realized that you guys didn't warn us on purpose. Your purpose was to see us make a fool of ourselves, right? And Hongdao was instantly furious. He stepped forward and said angrily, Yuan Weiqing, don't talk nonsense. If we knew about the snow leopard, why didn't we warn you? Du Wubao also hurriedly said, That's right. There's no deep hatred between us. If we knew about the snow leopard on Qingling Mountain, why didn't we warn you? Yuan Weiqing sneered and said, So, I know what you guys are thinking. But in short, you guys don't have good intentions. And Hongda said angrily, Who is the one with bad intentions? It clearly has nothing to do with us, but you want us to compensate. Tell us, who is the one with bad intentions? Yuan Weiqing heard this and waved his hand. He turned to look at Yi Tianhua and said coldly, Yi Tianhua, we've already stated our conditions. It depends on whether you guys are sincere in apologizing to us. LV Hushan also said loudly, That's right. If you guys really feel guilty, then agree to our conditions. At least you guys have a conscience. And Hongda was furious. It's not our fault. What right do you have to state your conditions? And what right do we have to compensate you? Tell us. Zhang Chunren's eyes widened as he stared at Yi Tianhua. Yi Tianhua, we've already stated our conditions. Do you agree or not? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yi Tianhua hesitated. Just as he was about to speak, Secret Thunder Sect's Hall Master Shuizhijing, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke. Yi Tianhua, we invited you here today to talk about compensation. But now you guys are making trouble for no reason. Do you not want to agree to our conditions? Yi Tianhua turned around and looked at Shuizhijing as he let out a sigh. I'm very sad about Vice Head Zhang's matter. If I could meet Vice Head Zhang's condition, even if it's for Zhang Huoxing, I would agree to it. At this point, Yi Tianhua paused, sighed and continued, Hall Master Shui, you know that Vice Hall Master Zhang's conditions are too high. Even if I want to agree, there's nothing I can do. Hearing Yi Tianhua's words, Xue Zhizheng nodded and turned to look at Zhang Chunren. He said in a deep voice, Vice Hall Master Zhang, if you have something to say, we can discuss it. Why make a fuss? It won't solve the problem. After hearing Xue Zhizheng's words, Zhang Chunren took a deep breath before turning his head to look at Yi Tianhua. He slowly said, Yi Tianhua, do you think these two conditions of mine are too much? Hearing this, Yi Tianhua hesitated for a moment before nodding. He smiled bitterly and said, Vice Hall Master Zhang, they are indeed too much. Whether it's the first or the second, I'm afraid I can't satisfy you. Hearing this, Zhang Chunren sneered, Yi Tianhua, don't tell me you don't even have 1,000,000 gold coins? Hearing Zhang Chunren's question, Yi Tianhua shook his head with a bitter smile and spread his hands. Vice Hall Master Zhang, I really don't have 1,000,000 gold coins. Your conditions are a bit too high. As soon as Yi Tianhua finished speaking, before Zhang Chunren could speak, Yuan Weiqing said loudly, Yi Tianhua, who are you lying to? The leader of the Shadow Alliance's South County branch doesn't even have 1,000,000 gold coins. Do you think we'll believe you? Yi Tianhua shook his head with a bitter smile. Whether you believe it or not, I really don't have this 1,000,000 gold coins. Yuan Weiqing sneered, Yi Tianhua, I think it's not that you don't have 1,000,000 gold coins, but that you don't want to give us these gold coins. This is just an excuse. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's aggressive question, and Hongda couldn't stand it anymore. He sneered and said, Yuan Weiqing, do you have 1,000,000 gold coins? Hearing in Hongda's question, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment. He subconsciously glanced at Xue Zhizheng and said loudly, Yi Tianhua is the leader of the South County branch of the Shadow Alliance. How can he not even have 1,000,000 gold coins? I absolutely don't believe it. Du Wudai sighed, Yuan Weiqing, whether you believe it or not, Brother Yi really can't take out 1,000,000 gold coins. If you don't believe it, then there's nothing we can do. After hearing everyone's conversation, Xue Zhizheng frowned and turned to look at Zhang Chunren, Vice Hall Leader Zhang. Since Yi Tianhua can't take out 1,000,000 gold coins, why don't you reduce it a little? What do you think? Hearing this, Zhang Chunren hesitated for a moment before nodding his head. He gritted his teeth and said, Hall Master Xue, I'm only giving you face by reducing Yi Tianhua's price by 200,000 gold coins. If Yi Tianhua still doesn't agree to my conditions, then I have no other choice. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing said loudly, Yi Tianhua, did you hear that? Our Vice Hall Master Zhang is offering you a discount of 200,000 gold coins. If you still don't agree, can I suspect that you have ulterior motives? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Yi Tianhua sighed and said with a bitter smile, Yuan Weiqing, the problem is, I don't even have 800,000 gold coins. How can I agree to your condition? Impossible. After hearing Yi Tianhua's answer, Yuan Weiqing suddenly became furious and shouted, Yi Tianhua, I think you just don't want to compensate our Vice Hall Leader Zhang. If that's what you really think, then just say it. Don't play these tricks. Yi Tianhua shook his head with a bitter smile. Yuan Weiqing, I really don't have 800,000 gold coins. Even if I want to compensate you, I can't. Chapter 664. Zhang Chunren stopped Yuan Weiqing, who was about to speak. He turned to Yi Tianhua and asked coldly, Yi Tianhua, do you want to settle this matter or not? Yi Tianhua nodded. Since I'm here, I want to settle this matter. Zhang Chunren sneered. All right, since you want to settle this matter, why don't you agree to my conditions? Yi Tianhua shook his head and smiled bitterly. I want to agree to your conditions, but I don't have that many gold coins. Even if I want to, I can't. Zhang Chunren nodded and turned to Xue Zhizheng. He said loudly, Hall Master, you heard it. I only want 500,000 gold coins. Is this price okay? Shui Zhizheng nodded and turned to Yi Tianhua. He asked slowly, Yi Tianhua, 500,000 gold coins. You should be able to take it out, right? Yi Tianhua hesitated for a moment before nodding. All right, on account of Hall Master Shui, I'll agree to give you 500,000 gold coins. Zhang Chunren shook his head. Yi Tianhua, don't forget that I have a second condition. Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but he did not wait for Yi Tianhua's reply and continued to speak. Yi Tianhua, if you agree to give me 5 years of free information, I'll let bygones be bygones. What do you think? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, before Yi Tianhua could reply, and Hongda said loudly, Zhang Chunren, don't talk nonsense. Giving you 500,000 gold coins is already the most generous thing I can do. You still want 5 years of free information? Are you dreaming? Zhang Chunren ignored an Hongda and looked coldly at Yi Tianhua. He asked loudly, Yi Tianhua, is this what you want? After hesitating for a short while, Yi Tianhua let out a sigh. Zhang Chunren, your son Zhang Huisheng's matter has nothing to do with me. I've already done my best to compensate you with 500,000 gold coins. If you have any other conditions, I have nothing to say. After hearing Yi Tianhua's words, Zhang Chunren immediately roared, Yi Tianhua, since you said so, I will also harm your son. Then we will be even. What do you think? And Hongda couldn't bear it anymore. He took a step forward and shouted, Zhang Chunren, don't push your luck. The reason why your son had this kind of thing happen is that your secret thunder sect didn't defend properly. It has nothing to do with our information. You're just being unreasonable. Zhang Chunren sneered. And Hongda, if you're willing, I can also harm your son. I promise I won't pursue this matter any further. What do you think? Nonsense. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, An Hongda was instantly enraged and shouted sternly, Zhang Chunren, I think you're a villain. It's clearly your own fault, but you want to blame it on us. What exactly are you thinking? Hearing An Hongda's words, Yuan Weiqing suddenly shouted, An Hongda, since you did something wrong, is this compensation not enough? An Hongda sneered. If it's really our fault, we will definitely take responsibility. But if it's not our fault, why should we take responsibility? As soon as An Hongda's voice fell, Dian suddenly saw a flash of knife light in front of his eyes. Yuan Weiqing had already rushed up with his knife. An Hongda, if I don't show you my power, you really won't be honest. Seeing Yuan Weiqing rushing over, An Hongda snorted coldly and immediately pulled out his knife to meet Yuan Weiqing. Bang! Their knives collided in the air and suddenly made a crisp sound. After the sound, both of them took a step back at the same time. Yuan Weiqing roared and rushed up again with his knife. An Hongda was not to be outdone. He took a step to the side and dodged Yuan Weiqing's fierce attack. The knife in his hand swept toward Yuan Weiqing's back. Yuan Weiqing didn't panic. He rushed forward and swept past An Hongda's side. With a backhand knife, he blocked An Hongda's attack. Bang! Their knives collided again, making a crisp sound. An Hongda quickly withdrew his knife and punched Yuan Weiqing with his right fist. Yuan Weiqing withdrew his knife and raised it in front of An Hongda's fist. An Hongda saw that the situation was not good. He hurriedly withdrew his fist and blocked Yuan Weiqing's knife. At the same time, the knife in his left hand swept again. Yuan Weiqing raised his knife again to meet the attack. An Hongda saw that his attack was ineffective and immediately withdrew his knife. While Yuan Weiqing's knife was outside, he fiercely stabbed at Yuan Weiqing with the tip of his knife. Yuan Weiqing was shocked when he saw this. He couldn't care less about attacking. He hurriedly jumped back and dodged An Hongda's attack. An Hongda saw Yuan Weiqing retreat and sneered. He stomped hard on the ground and continued to chase Yuan Weiqing with his knife. Yuan Weiqing saw that things were not going well. Before he landed on the ground, he hurriedly withdrew his knife and blocked in front of him. Bang! The sabers in their hands clashed once again. And Hongda fell to the ground, but Yuan Weiqing was knocked back a few steps by the impact of the saber. Only then did he manage to stabilize himself. Yuan Weiqing was just about to breathe a sigh of relief when he saw that An Hongda had raised the knife in his hand and was chopping at him. Seeing the power of An Hongda's knife, Yuan Weiqing didn't dare to block it again. He hurriedly jumped to the side. An Hongda's knife missed. As soon as he landed, he turned on his toes and swept the knife in his hand toward Yuan Weiqing again. Yuan Weiqing was shocked when he saw the knife flashing in front of him. He hurriedly held the knife in his hand to his side and blocked An Hongda's fierce attack. However, although Yuan Weiqing's saber managed to block An Hongda's attack, the power of An Hongda's saber was too strong. It actually caused Yuan Weiqing's arm to go numb, and he had to take 3 or 4 steps back before he could stabilize himself. An Hongda snorted coldly. He stomped hard on the ground and bounced up. The knife in his hand suddenly became a ball of light as he chased after Yuan Weiqing. Seeing that An Hongda's attacks were getting faster and faster, Yuan Weiqing didn't dare to block anymore and could only retreat again. An Hongda sneered, "You want to dodge? It's not that easy." As he spoke, the knife in An Hongda's hand danced even more rapidly. It shone brightly and chopped at the retreating Yuan Weiqing. Yuan Weiqing saw that An Hongda was in midair. His eyes suddenly flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. He suddenly took out a pellet and threw it at An Hongda. Although the pellet was small, An Hongda was shocked when he saw it. He wanted to withdraw his knife and retreat, but how could he retreat when he was in midair? An Hongda gritted his teeth. Not only did he not retreat, but he danced the knife in his hand even more rapidly. However, this time he wasn't brandishing the knife to attack, but to block the pellet. The dazzling saber light almost covered An Hongda's entire body. The pellets that Yuan Weiqing threw out were shattered by the sharp saber light as soon as they reached the saber light. However, at this moment the pellet suddenly exploded. A ball of flame leaped out from the pellet and instantly burned An Hongda's hair. Not only that, the impact of the pellet's explosion made An Hongda slightly dizzy. Seeing that An Hongda was in midair with his eyes closed and the knife in his hand had slowed down, Yuan Weiqing was instantly overjoyed. He snorted coldly and stomped his foot. He shot up and rushed toward An Hongda in midair. In a blur, An Hongda saw a shadow rushing toward him. He was shocked and wanted to block with his knife. However, how could he make it in time? His knife was only halfway in his hand when he saw a white light flash before his eyes. He subconsciously tried his best to dodge to the side. The white light brushed past his head and fell to the ground. An Hongda only felt pain in his arm and his strength suddenly disappeared. He cursed in his heart. As soon as he landed on the ground, he used all his strength to retreat. Yuan Weiqing saw that An Hongda had no strength to fight back. He immediately sneered and brandished his knife and rushed forward again. At this moment, Du Wudai, who saw that An Hongda was injured, suddenly roared and rushed in front of An Hongda. He waved his fist and smashed it toward Yuan Weiqing, who was rushing over. Yuan Weiqing did not dodge. He directly waved his knife in front of him and slashed at Du Wudai's arm. Du Wudai saw this and hurriedly withdrew his fist. When the knife light flashed past, he threw out both his fists again and smashed it toward Yuan Weiqing. The knife in Yuan Weiqing's hand had already flown to the periphery. It was too late to block Du Wudai's fist. He could only retreat bitterly. Seeing that Yuan Weiqing had retreated, Du Wudai did not chase after him. He hurriedly withdrew his fist and came to An Hongda's side. Looking at the injury on his arm, he asked softly, "An Hongda, how are you? Are you all right?" An Hongda shook his head. "Luckily, I dodged in time. It's only an external injury." At this moment, An Hongda's disciple, Sima Xing, also ran over. "Master, let me help you bandage it." An Hongda ignored Sima Xing. He raised his head and looked at Yuan Weiqing. He shouted sternly, "Yuan Weiqing, you secretly attacked others. What kind of hero are you?" Seeing that Du Wudai had already come to An Hongda's side, it was impossible for him to attack again. Yuan Weiqing sneered, "An Hongda, I'm a member of the secret Thunder sect. Could it be that using our secret Thunder sect's things counts as injuring others?" LV Hushan also strode to Yuan Weiqing's side. Looking at Du Wudai who was beside An Hongda, he shouted sternly, "Du Wudai, you bully others with your numbers. What kind of hero are you? Come, let's fight." Hearing LV Hushan's contemptuous words, Du Wudai suddenly flew into a rage. He suddenly turned to look at LV Hushan and shouted sternly, "LV Hushan, do you think I'm afraid of you?" LV Hushan sneered, "Du Wudai, if you're not afraid of me, then come and fight with me?" Du Wudai suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed. After laughing, he immediately jumped into the air and punched towards LV Hushan with a fierce wind. Seeing this, LV Hushan took a deep breath and shouted. He also waved his fist towards Du Wudai's fist in the air. LV Hushan's strength was great, so he wasn't afraid of fighting with Du Wudai. Seeing this, Du Wudai sneered. Just as the two fists were about to collide, Du Wudai turned his body and his fist bypassed LV Hushan's fist and smashed onto LV Hushan's arm. LV Hushan cried out and took a step back. However, he immediately waved his other fist and swept it towards Du Wudai who was falling from the air. Du Wudai had nowhere to borrow strength in the air. It was too late for him to dodge, so he could only wave his arm to block. Both of their arms collided. Du Wudai groaned and fell to the ground. However, LV Hushan didn't care. He only shook his arm and rushed up again. After the collision of their arms, Du Wudai already knew that LV Hushan's strength was far greater than his. Naturally, he didn't dare to clash with him. Seeing LV Hushan rushing up again, Du Wudai could only take a step back and punch LV Hushan's arm. Although LV Hushan's strength was great, Du Wudai's punch was on his arm, so he couldn't exert strength. He was hit until he staggered and rushed to the side. Seeing this scene, Du Wudai suddenly understood that LV Hushan only had great strength. His real martial arts weren't as good as his. Understanding this, Du Wudai's confidence increased greatly. Taking advantage of the moment when LV Hushan just turned around, he fiercely punched LV Hushan's side. Although LV Hushan had great strength, he would still be hurt if he was hit. Seeing Du Wudai's punch, he could only bend his arm and block his side. Du Wudai's punch landed on LV Hushan's arm. However, LV Hushan's body only paused for a moment before he punched Du Wudai. Du Wudai hurriedly jumped to the side and dodged LV Hushan's punch. At the same time, he punched LV Hushan's side again. LV Hushan repeated the same trick. He bent his arm again and blocked his side. Du Wudai only smiled slightly and raised his arm. His fist actually went through LV Hushan's arm. "Ah!" LV Hushan screamed and hurriedly retreated. Du Wudai was about to chase after him when he suddenly heard a breeze. He was shocked and hurriedly retreated with all his strength. Just as Du Wudai retreated, the saber in Yuan Weiqing's hand whistled in the wind and landed at the place where he was standing just now. Du Wubao knew that he couldn't defeat the two of them, so he could only take 2 steps back. Then, he shouted sternly, "Yuan Weiqing, do you still want it or not? Don't tell me you want to fight 2 against 1? After hearing Du Wudai's words, Yuan Weiqing sneered, "Can't I?" After saying this, Yuan Weiqing turned to LV Hushan and said softly, "LV Hushan, let's go together." Yuan Weiqing didn't wait for LV Hushan's reply and immediately rushed towards Du Wudai. Du Wudai saw that the two of them were about to join forces. He didn't dare to fight anymore and hurriedly retreated. However, Yuan Weiqing didn't give up. The saber in his hand rolled up a white light and slashed towards Du Wudai. But Yuan Weiqing's saber was only halfway through when he felt a figure flashing in front of him. A white light blocked his saber with a crisp sound. Yuan Weiqing was forced back 4 to 5 steps by the impact. Even his hand felt numb. He was shocked and hurriedly raised his head to look. He realized that the person who came was Yi Tianhua. After Yi Tianhua repelled Yuan Weiqing, he immediately kept his sword and said loudly, "Yuan Weiqing, today everyone is here to discuss things, not to fight. Do you understand?" Hearing Yi Tianhua's words, Yuan Weiqing snorted, "Yi Tianhua, you guys didn't want to compensate first. That's why I attacked. If you want to talk about breaking the rules, it was you guys who broke it first. You can't blame me." Yi Tianhua heard this and shook his head. Chapter 665. Yi Tianhua shook his head. "Yuan Weiqing, no matter who's right or wrong, you hurt in Hongda, so you have to take responsibility." Yuan Weiqing laughed coldly and shook his head. "Yi Tianhua, as long as you agree to our terms, so what if I take responsibility?" Zhang Chunren, who had been watching from the side, suddenly shouted, "Yi Tianhua, Yuan Weiqing is a friend I invited. If there's anything, just look for me." After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yi Tianhua nodded. "Zhang Chunren, you can't blame us for what happened to your son, Zhang Huosheng. It's your fault that he was killed by the snow leopard because you didn't investigate properly." Zhang Chunren gritted his teeth and laughed coldly. "Yi Tianhua, are you saying that you don't want to take responsibility?" Yi Tianhua nodded slowly. "Now that you've hurt in Hongdao, I won't pursue the matter any further. Let's call it even. What do you think?" Zhang Chunren laughed coldly and shook his head. "Yi Tianhua, and Hongdao was only hurt, but my son was hurt by the snow leopard. How can you compare that?" Speaking up to this point, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment. Then, without waiting for Yi Tianhua to reply, he continued. "Yi Tianhua, according to what you said, if I hurt your son and then let you hurt me, then can we call it even?" Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing laughed out loud. "Yi Tianhua, if this can last for 2 days, then hurry up and go home to see your son, ha ha." Seeing that Zhang Chunren and the others were being unreasonable, Yi Tianhua was displeased and shouted, "Zhang Chunren, how can you joke about this kind of thing? I've already said that Zhang Huosheng's matter has nothing to do with us. Since I agreed to compensate you, it's because the dead can't come back to life. However, you've taken an inch and wanted a mile. You actually want more. Zhang Chunren, please forgive me for not agreeing to this." Hearing Yi Tianhua's words, Zhang Chunren's face was filled with sadness. He turned to Xue Zhijing and said sadly, "Hall Master Xue, did you see that? It's clearly their fault, but Yi Tianhua won't admit it." Speaking up to this point, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment before continuing, "Hall Master Xue, if we want justice, it seems that we can only ask you to deal with Yi Tianhua." Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Xue Zhijing frowned and said in a low voice, "Zhang Chunren, aren't your conditions too high? Yi Tianhua has already agreed to compensate us 500,000 gold coins. That's already done his best. If we ask for a second condition, it doesn't seem appropriate?" Hall Master Xue Zhijing, Hall Master Xue's words, if they were kind and righteous, my son would he have been killed by the snow leopard? Master Xue Xue, Xue's, Xue's Xue, Xue's Xue, my Xue Xue to Xue and Xue Xue Xue. Xue 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 Xue. Yi Xue 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 to. Since they were able to find the flaming soaring rock, they must have discovered the snow leopard as well. Since they have discovered the snow leopard, they have the responsibility to inform us so that we can be more careful and send more people to deal with the snow leopard. But what about them? They didn't say anything. Even if we paid them for information about the flaming crystal, they didn't tell us that there was a snow leopard beside the flaming crystal. Hall Master Xue, don't tell me you still don't understand what they're thinking? After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Xue Zhijing turned to look at Yi Tianhua and asked loudly, Yi Tianhua, tell me, did you already know about the snow leopard? Yi Tianhua shook his head. I don't know. We only know that there are flaming stones on Green Tower Mountain, but we don't know that he has a snow leopard. Yi Tianhua paused for a moment, but he did not wait for Shui Zhizheng's reply and continued. Hall Master Shui, if we already knew about the snow leopard, why didn't we warn you? You have to believe us. We didn't deliberately hide the snow leopard from you. After hearing Yi Tianhua's words, Shui Zhizheng nodded. He turned to look at Zhang Chunren and said softly, Zhang Chunren, I don't think Yi Tianhua is lying. They really didn't know about the snow leopard and didn't intend to hide it from us. Zhang Chunren shook his head. Hall Master Shui, that's impossible. That snow leopard definitely didn't go there just now. You have to know that every snow leopard has its own territory. It would never trespass into someone else's territory. It would never move so easily. Zhang Chunren paused for a moment before continuing. This proves that the snow leopard was there a long time ago. If they could find the flaming crystal, how could they not find the snow leopard? They were obviously lying and wanted to deceive us. In the end, my poor Huixing fell into their trap and was killed by the snow leopard. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Shui Zhizheng couldn't help but frown as he pondered over Zhang Chunren's words. Every snow leopard had its own territory. There was no doubt about that. Moreover, if one bought a snow leopard, it would never move. This was certain as well. Just as Zhang Chunren had said, since the snow leopard wouldn't move, didn't that mean that the flaming crystal was in the snow leopard's territory? Since the flaming crystal was in the snow leopard's territory, there was no reason why Yi Tianhua couldn't find the snow leopard. In other words, even if they couldn't find the snow leopard, Shui Zhizheng was certain that the snow leopard could find Yi Tianhua and the rest. Didn't this mean that Yi Tianhua was lying? At this thought, Shui Zhizheng's mood turned sour. He lifted his head to look at Yi Tianhua and shouted sternly, Yi Tianhua, why did you lie to me? Yi Tianhua was stunned when he heard Shui Zhizheng's shout. He looked at Shui Zhizheng in confusion and asked slowly, Hall Master Shui, what do you mean? When did I lie to you? Shui Zhizheng laughed coldly. Yi Tianhua, we've all been in the pugilistic world for many years. Do you really think that you can fool me with that excuse of yours? Yi Tianhua waved his hands hurriedly. Hall Master Shui, what do you mean by that? When did I lie to you? And why did I lie to you? You better be clear. Seeing that Yi Tianhua refused to admit it, Shui Zhizheng laughed coldly and nodded. Yi Tianhua, since you refuse to admit it, let me ask you. Did you see any snow leopards on Qingling Mountain? Yi Tianhua shook his head. No. If we had seen any snow leopards, we would have told you. Hearing Yi Tianhua's reply, Shui Zhizheng's eyes widened in anger. He shouted sternly, Yi Tianhua, let me ask you again. Will the snow leopard leave its territory? Yi Tianhua shook his head. No. At this point, Yi Tianhua paused for a moment before continuing. Every snow leopard has its own territory. They won't leave it easily. Unless they're killed by an enemy, their territory will then be taken over by others. At this point, Yi Tianhua's heart skipped a beat. His face changed immediately, and his brows furrowed deeply. He wanted to continue speaking, but he couldn't. Looking at Yi Tianhua's expression, Shui Zhizheng laughed coldly once more. Yi Tianhua, why aren't you continuing? Go on, go on. I really want to hear what else you have to say now. Hearing this, Yi Tianhua sighed but did not say anything. It was only now that he realized that he was completely wrong. He had thought that Zhang Chunren had no reason to blame him. But at this moment, Yi Tianhua suddenly realized that Zhang Chunren really did have a reason to blame him for not telling them about the snow leopard. In the life of a snow leopard, unless it was killed by someone, it would always stay in its own territory and would never leave easily. Zhang Huixing was killed by the snow leopard when he was looking for the flaming stone. Didn't this mean that the flaming stone was in the snow leopard's territory? If he went to the snow leopard's territory to look for the flaming stone, even if he couldn't find the snow leopard would come as soon as possible to drive the outsider out of its territory. Thinking of this, Tianhua began to feel suspicious. What was going on? Why did the snow leopard kill Zhang Huosheng when he didn't find it? What was the reason? What was the reason for all this? Did the snow leopard not appear when he went to look for the flaming stone? But that couldn't be right. As long as he stepped into the snow leopard's territory, the snow leopard would have found him. What was going on? Seeing that Tianhua didn't answer his question, Xue Zhizheng sneered. Tianhua, what else do you have to say? Tianhua smiled bitterly and shook his head. Hall Master Xue, I don't know what's going on either. This time, before Xue Zhizheng could speak, Yuan Weiqing spoke first. Tianhua, I think you're pretending not to know? Hearing this, Du Wudai was furious. Yuan Weiqing, who are you calling pretending not to know? Yuan Weiqing sneered and shook his head. Du Wudai, do you think we don't know what kind of existence the snow leopard is? The snow leopard will never leave its territory. This is enough to prove that the flaming stone is in the snow leopard's territory. At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused and continued, You found the snow leopard when you were looking for the flaming stone, but you pretended not to know and beat us at our own game. You sold us the information only when we needed the flaming stone. However, you didn't tell us about the snow leopard. You obviously have bad intentions and want to harm us. Hearing this, Du Wudai flew into a rage. Yuan Weiqing, don't talk nonsense. If we knew about the snow leopard, why wouldn't we tell you? Yuan Weiqing sneered. Du Wudai, since you're going to tell us, why didn't you tell us when we bought the information? You obviously have other motives. It's a pity that Zhang Huosheng was harmed by your scheme. It's not worth it. Hearing this, Du Wudai couldn't help but frown. He turned to look at Tianhua with a questioning gaze. Du Wudai had been in the Jianghu for so many years. How could he not know that the snow leopard wouldn't leave its territory? However, Du Wudai didn't want to believe that Tianhua was deliberately hiding it because Tianhua wasn't that kind of person. From another perspective, Tianhua and Zhang Chunren didn't have any grudges. There was no need to play such tricks. Tianhua looked at Du Wudai's gaze and shook his head with a bitter smile, indicating that he didn't know what was going on either. Zhang Chunren suddenly shouted, Tianhua, what do you want to do about my son, Zhang Huosheng? Hearing Zhang Chunren's question, Tianhua sighed. Zhang Chunren, I really don't know why the flaming stone would appear in the snow leopard's territory. I also find it strange. When we sent people to look for the flaming stone, they didn't find the snow leopard. This is definitely not a cover-up, it's the truth. Enough. Before Tianhua could finish, he was interrupted by Zhang Chunren. Tianhua, cut the crap. Let me ask you, how do you want to investigate this matter? Tianhua smiled bitterly and shook his head. How about this? I'll go back and investigate to see what's going on. After I've investigated it thoroughly, we'll discuss it again. What do you think? Zhang Chunren laughed coldly and shook his head. Tianhua, even now, you're still trying to play tricks. Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren's tone paused for a moment before he continued. Now that the evidence is conclusive, you can't win against us, so you want to run away, right? Tianhua shook his head. Zhang Chunren, don't worry. Tianhua, am definitely not that kind of person. As long as this matter is investigated thoroughly, I'll definitely give you a satisfactory answer. Hearing this, Zhang Chunren immediately looked up to the sky and laughed. After laughing, he glared at Tianhua and said loudly, Tianhua, are you planning to leave here and disappear? Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment. However, he didn't wait for Tianhua to answer him and continued to speak. Tianhua, you make it sound nice. If you hide, where can we find you in the south region? Hearing this, Tianhua quickly shook his head. Zhang Chunren, don't worry. I, Tianhua, am a man of my words. I definitely won't hide. Speaking of this, Tianhua's tone paused for a moment before he continued. Zhang Chunren, I'm also wondering what's going on. I have to go back and investigate thoroughly. Zhang Chunren shook his head. Tianhua, I don't think that's necessary. I don't have time to look for you again. Let's settle this matter here today. Hearing Zhang Chunren's question, Tianhua was stunned for a moment before he shook his head and said solemnly, Zhang Chunren, before this matter is clarified, I can't tell you how to solve it. Therefore, let's wait for me to investigate this matter before deciding how to deal with it. Hearing this, Zhang Chunren sneered and turned to look at Xue Zhizheng. He said loudly, Hall Master Xue, Tianhua wants to take the opportunity to escape. What do you think we should do about this matter? Xue Zhizheng frowned. Zhang Chunren, I think Tianhua's words make sense. Why don't we let him go back and investigate this matter? After the investigation is done, we'll decide how to deal with your matter. Chapter 666. Zhang Chunren asked loudly, Hall Master Xue, do you think I'm lying? Xue Zhizheng shook his head. Zhang Chunren, I didn't suspect you? Zhang Chunren sighed. Hall Master Xue, since you didn't suspect me, why did you let him go? Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Xue Zhizheng's reply and continued to speak. Hall Master Xue, we've just said that the Flaming Rock is in the Snow Leopard's territory. How could they not have discovered the Snow Leopard's existence? They were obviously lying and plotting against us. Hall Master Xue, don't you understand? They did it on purpose, not unintentionally. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Xue Zhizheng asked doubtfully, Zhang Chunren, do you have a grudge against him? Zhang Chunren shook his head. No, I don't have any contact with Tianhua. How could I have a grudge against him? Xue Zhizheng frowned. Did your friend offend him? Is that why he set you up? Zhang Chunren shook his head again. No, our dealings with Tianhua are limited to trading information. Although we've bought information from him a few times, we really didn't have any contact. Therefore, I can guarantee that there's no grudge between us. Hearing Zhang Chunren's answer, Xue Zhizheng was even more puzzled. Since there's no grudge between you, why would he want to harm you? He has no reason to do so. Zhang Chunren shook his head. I'm not sure either. No matter what, Tianhua used the Snow Leopard to harm Huosheng. I can't let him go. Xue Zhizheng's frown deepened. He turned to look at Tianhua and asked loudly, Tianhua, why did you do this? Tianhua did not hear the conversation between Zhang Chunren and Xue Zhizheng. When he heard Xue Zhizheng's question, he could only smile bitterly and shake his head. Hall Master Xue, I don't understand what you're talking about. We're just trading information. Is there anything wrong with that? This time, before Xue Zhizheng could answer, Yuan Weiqing suddenly said loudly, Tianhua, there's something wrong with this. You knew that the Snow Leopard was next to the Flaming Rock, but you refused to tell us. Huosheng was harmed by the Snow Leopard. I think you have an ulterior motive. Tianhua shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, then tell me, what is my purpose? Yuan Weiqing laughed coldly. How would I know? At this point, Yuan Weiqing's mind suddenly moved, and he suddenly exclaimed, Could it be that your Shadow Alliance wants to attack our secret Thunder Sect? Nonsense. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Tianhua was shocked. He shouted, Yuan Weiqing, don't talk nonsense. We're just trading information. How could it be like that? Yuan Weiqing laughed. I understand, I finally understand. Tianhua, you're so cruel. I'm afraid that the target of your plan is not just Huosheng. It should be someone else, or someone important to our secret Thunder School. Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but he did not wait for Tianhua's reply and continued. Tianhua, you know that when we go to mine or we send our craftsmen, I'm afraid that your purpose is our craftsmen, right? Huisheng just happened to be killed by the snow leopard at the right time. But your real purpose is the outstanding craftsman of our Tanlei school. Because you know that the reason why our Tanlei school can produce such powerful firearms is because of our craftsmen. As long as you plan to kill them, you will imperceptibly weaken our Tanlei school. Then, you will take the opportunity to send people to attack our Tanlei school and take away our most important secret. Tianhua, am I right? Tianhua stared at Yuan Weiqing with his mouth agape. After a long while, he said loudly, Yuan Weiqing, you really know how to talk nonsense. I really admire you for bringing up such a matter of buying and selling information. Speaking of this, Tianhua turned to look at Xue Zhizheng. When he was about to speak, he saw Xue Zhizheng staring at him with an ugly face. This time, Zhang Huisheng was not the only one who was lost in the search for the flaming stone. 2 senior craftsmen of the Secret Thunder Sect were also lost. The reason why the Secret Thunder Sect was so powerful and almost no one could shake them was that they relied on their powerful firearms. However, these powerful firearms were quite complicated to make. There were only 8 craftsmen who could make these firearms in the Secret Thunder Sect of the South County. However, this time they had lost 2 craftsmen. Although Xue Zhizheng was heartbroken, he really did not think in this direction. At this moment, when he heard Yuan Weiqing's words, he suddenly had some doubts in his heart. If what Yuan Weiqing said was true, then the loss of the Secret Thunder School would not only be Zhang Kexing, but also the entire Secret Thunder School. There were only 8 craftsmen in the South Region's Secret Thunder Sect. After losing 2 people this time, there were only 6 craftsmen left. If they were not careful and Tianhua sold them false information, they would probably lose even more craftsmen. Thinking that there would be no more craftsmen in the Secret Thunder Sect in the South Region, Xue Zhizheng's heart could not help but tremble. This was too terrifying. It was so terrifying that he did not dare to imagine it anymore. The most important thing was that every time they went to search for ores, these craftsmen had to accompany them. This was because in order to protect the secret of the Secret Thunder Sect, some special ores were only known by those craftsmen. Therefore, every time they went to search for these special ores, these craftsmen would go together. The only difference was the number of craftsmen each time. This time, they had lost 2 craftsmen. Next time, would they lose 4 craftsmen? Thinking of this, Xue Zhizheng felt a surge of anger. Destroying the craftsmen of the Secret Thunder Sect was equivalent to destroying the Secret Thunder Sect. Thinking of the terrifying consequences of this matter, Xue Zhizheng looked coldly at Tianhua and asked sternly, Tianhua, you are so ruthless. What enmity does our Secret Thunder Sect have with your Shadow Alliance that you have to set us up like this? Hearing Xue Zhizheng's words, Tianhua was shocked. This was no small matter. Xue Zhizheng was the Hall Master of the Secret Thunder Sect in the South Region. His words were equivalent to the attitude of the Secret Thunder Sect in the South Region. Tianhua didn't want the Shadow Alliance to go to war with the Secret Thunder Sect. It wouldn't be good for anyone. Tianhua hurriedly waved his hand. Hall Master Xue, you've misunderstood. We definitely didn't mean that. We really don't know anything about this matter. Please let us go back and investigate and see what's going on. Xue Zhizheng sneered and shook his head. Tianhua, I think you should make it clear today. Yuan Weiqing said loudly. Tianhua, your plan has been seen through by us. Are you so scared that you want to slip away? Tianhua shook his head. I said I won't slip away. I just want to go back and investigate and see what is going on. Then I will give you an answer. No. Zhang Chunren shouted sternly. Tianhua, since we are all here today, you should tell us clearly how to deal with this matter. Otherwise, none of you can leave today. Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Du Wubao asked loudly, Zhang Chunren, do you want to attack us? Zhang Chunren snorted. Du Wubao, since you dare to set up such a plan, we dare to attack you. Even if outsiders know, they will applaud us. Du Wubao sneered. I don't think so. The things that you've said are all just your baseless guesses without any evidence. Who would believe your words? Hearing Du Wubao's words, Yuan Weiqing suddenly laughed. Du Wubao, I think you are guilty. If you are not guilty, why are you in a hurry to escape? Hearing this, Du Wubao was furious. Yuan Weiqing, why should I be guilty? We did not do such a thing. Everything is just your imagination. What do I have to be guilty about? Speaking until here, Du Wubao paused for a while before continuing. Moreover, even if we go back now, we only want to investigate this matter. We have no intention of slipping away. Hearing Du Wubao's words, Yuan Weiqing suddenly sneered. Du Wubao, your words are too nice, but I don't believe you. Huosheng's matter must be settled today. I don't care what results you will find in the future. Today, this matter must be settled. Hearing this, Du Wubao was furious. Yuan Weiqing, we still don't know the truth. How are we going to settle this matter? And Hongda, who had been silent all this while, also shouted angrily, Yuan Weiqing, what you said just now is just your side of the story. You can't take it seriously. This matter in Green Tower Mountain has nothing to do with us. We only sold you the information about the flaming stones, and you only gave us the money for the flaming stones. As for the information about the snow leopard, we don't know about it. Even if we did, you didn't buy the information. Why should we tell you? After hearing in Hongda's words, Yuan Weiqing suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed. He pointed at An Hongda and shouted, An Hongda, you're right this time. You clearly know about the snow leopard, but because we didn't pay you, you didn't tell us about it. What is your intention? An Hongda said coldly, Yuan Weiqing, you don't have to care about our intentions. We will leave now and investigate this matter thoroughly. Then, we will give you an answer. Hearing An Hongda's words, Zhang Chunren sneered, An Hongda, are you trying to slip away? At this point, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but he did not wait for An Hongda to answer his question and continued to speak. You set up such a scheme, and when you saw that we saw through it, you want to slip away. Do you think there is such a good thing in this world? An Hongda turned to look at Zhang Chunren and shouted, Zhang Chunren, what do you want? Hearing this, Zhang Chunren snorted, either you agree to my conditions. If you don't, it will prove that what Yuan Weiqing said was true. You want to provoke a war between the Shadow Alliance and the Tan Thunder sect. I will never let you go. An Hongda sneered and shook his head. Zhang Chunren, do you think you can stop us from leaving? Before Zhang Chunren could speak, Xue Zhijing suddenly said, An Hongda, what if I join in? When Yuan Weiqing saw this, he shouted, Me too. LV Hushan took a step forward and shouted, If you want to leave, you have to ask if I, LV Hushan, agree. Seeing that the two sides were about to fight, Yi Tianhua hurriedly waved his hand. Why are you so angry? If there is anything we can discuss it. We can always find a solution. Speaking of this, Yi Tianhua turned to look at Xue Zhijing and said with a smile, Hall Master Xue, although our Shadow Alliance and the Tan Thunder sect don't have a deep friendship, we have never had a dispute. For so many years, we have lived in peace. Yi Tianhua paused for a moment before continuing, Hall Master Xue, are we going to start a war just because of this? Hearing Yi Tianhua's words, Xue Zhijing suddenly realized that if he fought with Yi Tianhua this time, it would really cause a war between the Tan Thunder sect and the Shadow Alliance. At that time, if the Tan Thunder sect won, everything would be fine. However, the Shadow Alliance was not a weak sect. It would not be easy to defeat them. If the Tan Thunder sect lost, he would be the biggest sinner of the Tan Thunder sect in the South region. Thinking of this, Xue Zhijing took a deep breath and calmed his chaotic emotions. Then, he said, Yi Tianhua, tell me, what is going on? Yi Tianhua shook his head with a wry smile. Hall Master Xue, if I knew what was going on, I wouldn't want to go back and investigate. Just as Yi Tianhua said this, he was interrupted by Yuan Weiqing. Yi Tianhua, I think everything you say is nonsense. You just want to take the opportunity to slip away, right? Hearing this, An Hongda suddenly became angry and shouted, Yuan Weiqing, don't talk nonsense. We just want to go back and investigate the truth of this matter. How can we slip away? Yuan Weiqing shook his head and said with a sneer, An Hongda, I don't believe you, so please solve this matter today. Otherwise, we will never let you go. Yi Tianhua saw this and sighed, Hall Master Shui, we really just want to go back and investigate this matter. We don't want to take the opportunity to slip away. At this point, Yi Tianhua paused for a moment before continuing, Hall Master Shui, we are all from the South County. Even if I slip away, where can I hide? It can't be that we will never see each other again, right? After hearing Yi Tianhua's words, Shui Zhizheng's heart moved. He felt that Yi Tianhua's words made sense. They were all from the South region. Would they really hide for the rest of their lives because of this matter? It was impossible. Yi Tianhua was a reputable person. He was the boss of the Shadow Alliance in the South County. How could such a person hide because of such a small matter? Chapter 667. Thinking of this, Shui Zhizheng was about to speak when Zhang Chunren suddenly shouted, Yi Tianhua, I don't believe you. You have to solve my son Zhang Huosheng's problem today. Otherwise, I will never let you go. Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing also shouted, Yes, Huosheng's problem must be solved today. Otherwise, we will fight. Hearing this, An Hongda coldly snorted, Yuan Weiqing, do you think that you can beat us because you have more people? Hearing An Hongda's words, Yuan Weiqing suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed. After laughing, Yuan Weiqing fiercely stared at An Hongda. An Hongda, you were defeated by me. What qualifications do you have to speak here? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, An Hongda suddenly remembered that Yuan Weiqing had plotted against him. He immediately flew into a rage and pointed his finger at Yuan Weiqing, shouting in a stern voice, Yuan Weiqing, if you didn't stab me in the back, how could you be my opponent? Speaking of this, An Hongda paused and coldly snorted before continuing, I don't know who was defeated by my saber just now. Hearing An Hongda's words, Yuan Weiqing's face turned red and he loudly said, An Hongda, our secret thunder sect is famous for its firearms. As a protector of the secret thunder sect, using the firearms of the secret thunder sect is considered a stab in the back? An Hongda, a loss is a loss. Why do you have so much nonsense to say? If you are not convinced, we will fight again. Do you dare? Although An Hongda was injured, hearing Yuan Weiqing's clamor, he immediately rushed forward with his saber. Seeing that things were not going well, Du Wudai hurriedly pulled An Hongda and whispered, An Hongda, don't be fooled by him. He is luring you over. Hearing Du Wudai's words, An Hongda suddenly woke up. He turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and angrily said, Yuan Weiqing, you despicable person. Sooner or later, I will let you taste the taste of my saber. Yuan Weiqing sneered, An Hongda, don't make it sound so nice. If you have the ability, come here now and let me see what you are capable of. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Du Wudai sternly shouted, Yuan Weiqing, if you have the ability, come here and let us see your secret thunder sect's sneak attacks. Hearing Du Wudai say that it was a sneak attack, Yuan Weiqing suddenly became furious. He pulled out his saber and roared. His body suddenly bounced up and rushed to Du Wudai. Seeing that Yuan Weiqing was really rushing over, Du Wubao's mouth curled into a sneer. He signaled to An Hongda with his eyes. When Yuan Weiqing's saber came slashing over, he suddenly dodged and dodged Yuan Weiqing's sharp saber. Du Wubao dodged the blade and rushed to Yuan Weiqing's side with a leap. He waved his right fist towards Yuan Weiqing's ribs. 2. Du Wudai's attack. His to Du Wudai. To do to go to the back to. Yuan Weiqing had already calculated that even if Du Wudai hit his ribs, he would only suffer a minor injury. However, if Du Wudai was hit by his saber, it would not be as simple as a minor injury. Therefore, Yuan Weiqing was certain that Du Wudai would definitely dodge his blade, and the fist that he had aimed at his ribs would naturally return empty-handed. Just as Yuan Weiqing was waiting for Du Wudai to retreat, he suddenly felt a gust of wind from his back. Yuan Weiqing was shocked. Only then did he remember that An Hongdao was still standing behind him. Yuan Weiqing already knew that the person who had launched a sneak attack on him from behind was definitely An Hongdao. Helpless, he couldn't care less about attacking Du Wudai. His figure dashed forward with all his might, and he fell towards the ground in an attempt to dodge An Hongdao's blade. However, how could An Hongdao's saber be dodged so easily? Although Yuan Weiqing had dodged more than half of it, when he was about to lie down, he suddenly felt a chill on his back. A heart-wrenching pain was transmitted to his brain. It was so painful that he could not help but scream and fall to the ground. Although the pain on his back was unbearable, Yuan Weiqing was, after all, a person with rich combat experience. When he fell to the ground, he immediately rolled a few times to one side. Yuan Weiqing had just rolled away when An Hongdao's sharp saber slashed at the place where he had just laid down. The strong wind brought up a cloud of dust. Although Yuan Weiqing could not see An Hongdao's saber, he could hear the sound of the saber hitting the ground. He was so scared that his soul almost left his body. He scrambled forward to avoid An Hongdao's next attack. Yuan Weiqing scrambled to his feet. He didn't even dare to look back. Instead, he immediately ran back to his side. Seeing Yuan Weiqing running back, LV Hushan hurriedly greeted him. "Yuan Weiqing, how are you? Quickly turn around and let me see." As he spoke, LV Hushan turned to Yuan Weiqing's back and checked the wound. He then said with relief, "It's not a big deal. Although the wound is a little deep, it's not serious. It's just an external injury." As he spoke, LV Hushan had already taken out a medicine bottle and sprinkled the entire bottle of medicine on the wound on Yuan Weiqing's back. Feeling the pain on his back, Yuan Weiqing clenched his teeth and turned to look at An Hongdao. He shouted sternly, "An Hongdao, you despicable person! How dare you attack me from behind?" An Hongdao sneered and shook his head. "Yuan Weiqing, since you didn't stab me in the back, why would I sneak attack you? I was fighting you fair and square. You couldn't avoid it because your martial arts are not good enough. You can't blame others." Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was furious. He immediately brandished his saber and was about to rush over again. However, just as he moved, a tearing pain came from his back. It was so painful that he screamed and his movements froze. Seeing this, Du Wudai was overjoyed. He sneered and said, "Yuan Weiqing, come over if you have the ability. I'll wait for you here." Yuan Weiqing was so angry that he clenched his teeth, but there was nothing he could do. LV Hushan, who was at the side, shouted sternly, "Why do you want us to go over? If you have the ability, come over and see how I'll deal with you." After hearing LV Hushan's words, Du Wudai was about to say something when Yi Tianhua coldly snorted, "Everyone, don't say any more. I think we should forget about today's matter. Let's go back and investigate. This matter is not simple. If we fight here, there will definitely be people secretly happy. At that time, won't we be fooled by him?" Hearing Yi Tianhua's words, Zhang Chunren sneered and shook his head. "Yi Tianhua, no matter what you say today, you must solve my son's matter for me. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving here." Yi Tianhua sighed, "Zhang Chunren, although I also want to solve this problem for you, I don't know the truth of this matter. How can I solve it for you?" An Hongdao, who was at the side, also said loudly, "Zhang Chunren, my brother Yi has already promised to give you 500,000 gold coins, but you are still not satisfied. You can't blame us for this. You can only say that you are greedy." Zhang Chunren sneered, "An Hongdao, do you think 500,000 gold coins can be compared to my son? At this point, Zhang Chuanren's tone paused for a moment. However, he did not wait for An Hongda to answer his question and continued to speak. An Hongda, if you can return my son, I will give you 1 million gold coins. Do you agree? Hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, An Hongda was suddenly stunned. For a moment, he did not know what to say. Seeing that An Hongda was speechless, Zhang Chuanren sneered. An Hongda, do you still think 500,000 gold coins is a lot? Hearing Zhang Chuanren's question, An Hongda sighed. Zhang Chuanren, I also sympathize with you. However, sympathy is sympathy. This matter has nothing to do with us. We can only help you to the best of our ability. If you are still unwilling, then we can't do anything. As soon as An Hongda's voice fell, Yuan Weiqing said loudly, An Hongda, do you want to just ignore this matter? An Hongda shook his head. I have already said that this matter has nothing to do with us. We only helped you out of kindness. However, since you are so overbearing, we can't do anything about it. Yuan Weiqing sneered and shook his head. An Hongda, I can see that you have no intention of getting involved in this matter from the beginning. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment. However, he did not wait for An Hongda to answer him and continued to speak. An Hongda, it seems that what I said is true. You have no good intentions from the beginning. You really have an ulterior motive for selling us the information about the flaming stones. In my opinion, you really want to lay your hands on our Tanlei sect. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, An Hongda suddenly flew into a rage. Yuan Weiqing, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. If you provoke a fight between the Shadow Alliance and the Tanlei sect because of your words, can you bear the responsibility? Yuan Weiqing sneered and shook his head. An Hongda, you are angry. It seems that what I said is right. You want to frame the senior craftsmen of our Tanlei sect first. Then, when our senior craftsmen are all dead and we can't make any more advanced firearms, you can then lay your hands on us. Am I right? An Hongda angrily glared at Yuan Weiqing, pointing his finger at him, and loudly said, Yuan Weiqing, I think you're the one who wants to provoke a fight between the Shadow Alliance and the Secret Thunder sect. Otherwise, how could you even say such harsh words? Yuan Weiqing sneered. An Hongda, since you dare to do it, don't you allow us to say it? The Shadow Alliance is too overbearing. An Hongda was so angry that he wanted to say something, but Yi Tianhua waved his hand and turned to look at Xue Zhizheng. Hall leader Xue, what do you think about this matter? Before Xue Zhizheng could say anything, Zhang Chuanren said loudly, Yi Tianhua, we will solve the problems mentioned by Yuan Weiqing later. Speaking of this, Zhang Chuanren paused for a moment before continuing, Today, you have to solve my son's problem no matter what. Yi Tianhua sighed, Zhang Chuanren, your first condition is 500,000 gold coins. I can go back and collect it, but your second condition, please forgive me for not agreeing. No. Zhang Chuanren roared angrily, Yi Tianhua, if you don't agree to my second condition, then you have to compensate me with 2 million gold coins. Otherwise, you have to agree to my second condition. Yi Tianhua smiled bitterly and shook his head. Zhang Chuanren, I don't even have 500,000 gold coins. I have to go back and collect it for you. If you want me to compensate you with 2 million gold coins, I'm afraid it's impossible in this lifetime. Zhang Chuanren snorted. Since you don't have 2 million gold coins, then you have to agree to my second condition? Yi Tianhua shook his head. Impossible. Our Shadow Alliance mainly sells information. If we give you free information for 5 years, what will happen to our Shadow Alliance in the future? Therefore, I will never agree to your second condition. After hearing Yi Tianhua's words, Yuan Weiqing sighed. Yi Tianhua, our Vice Hall leader Zhang knows that you can't afford 2 million gold coins, so he wants free information for 5 years to replace the remaining 1,500,000 gold coins. Don't you understand? Yi Tianhua shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, I don't understand what's going on either. After all, I wasn't the one who went to investigate the flaming stone. I'm also wondering why no one told me about the snow leopard. I want to go back and investigate. I want to know why this information hasn't been sent. When the time comes, I'll naturally give you a satisfactory answer after I find out the truth. Yuan Weiqing shook his head. Tianhua, you won't even agree to our second condition. How do you expect us to believe you? LV Hushan also said loudly. Yes, as long as you agree to our second condition, you can go back and investigate if you want. We won't stop you. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Tianhua's heart suddenly moved. He asked in a deep voice, if you don't agree to the first condition, I'll only agree to your second condition. Is that okay? After hearing Tianhua's words, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment. He then turned to look at Zhang Chunren. Zhang Chunren was also stunned for a moment. After a while, he shook his head. No, you have to agree to both of my conditions. You can't even give me one condition. Tianhua was also stunned when he heard this. The reason why he said this was mainly to test Zhang Chunren. He wanted to see if Zhang Chunren's main purpose was the second condition. If Zhang Chunren agreed to his conditions and waived the first condition of 500,000 gold coins, it meant that 500,000 gold coins was dispensable to Zhang Chunren. It wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was the second condition, which was 5 years of free information. This was what Zhang Chunren wanted the most. However, Tianhua didn't expect Zhang Chunren to not agree to it. He still wanted 2 conditions. He wouldn't give up the first condition just because he agreed to the second condition. Thinking of this, Tianhua was a little confused. Could it be that he guessed wrong? Zhang Chunren really just wanted compensation and didn't have any other intentions? The real reason why he wanted 5 years of free information was to earn 5 million gold coins from it? If this was the truth, Tianhua didn't mind talking to Zhang Chunren and shortening the time of free information. But what was Zhang Chunren's purpose? Did he really want 500,000 gold coins, or did he say it deliberately? Chapter 668. After a moment of silence, Tianhua slowly said, Zhang Chunren, I will also give you a choice. Either I give you 1 million gold coins or you choose the second condition. At this point, Tianhua paused for a moment before continuing, Zhang Chunren, you can only choose one condition. Zhang Chunren shook his head. Tianhua, I want 2 conditions, but you can only agree to one condition. If I don't agree, you have to agree to both conditions. Tianhua nodded, 1 million gold coins. If you agree, I will prepare the gold coins for you. Zhang Chunren shook his head. Tianhua, you don't have to say any more. I only want 2 conditions. I will not agree to the first one. Tianhua was silent again. After a while, he slowly said, I can promise you 5 years of free information, but I will not give you any more gold coins. That would be too much. Zhang Chunren was stunned for a moment before shaking his head. No, if you agree, you have to agree to both conditions. Otherwise, you don't have to agree to any of them. Hearing this, Tianhua was even more confused. At this point, Zhang Chunren was still unwilling to give up the first condition. Could it be that he misunderstood him? Just as Tianhua was hesitating, and Hongda suddenly said, Zhang Chunren, Brother Yi has already said that he can agree to your second condition, but the first one must be cancelled. Are you still not satisfied? Hearing in Hongda's words, LV Hushan hurriedly turned to look at Zhang Chunren. Zhang Chunren hesitated for a moment before shaking his head again. 2 conditions, not 1 less. I will not agree to anything less. And Hongda shook his head, but we can't agree to either of the 2 conditions. You can only choose one. At this moment, Xue Zhijing turned to look at Zhang Chunren and said in a low voice, Vice Hall Master Zhang, I think we should just forget about this. It is useless to ask them for free information. Why don't we ask them to compensate you with 1,000,000 gold coins? After hearing Xue Zhizheng's words, a trace of anger flashed in Zhang Chuanren's eyes. However, this trace of anger disappeared in the blink of an eye. Hall Master Xue, we've already agreed on 2 conditions. I won't make things difficult for them. If they can't take out 1,000,000 gold coins, I'll ask them to take out 500,000 gold coins. However, they refuse to agree to the second condition. Doesn't this mean that they are too insincere? Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren paused for a second before continuing. Head Xue, don't underestimate the 5 years of free information. If we use it well, our tantrum sect will save a lot of money, which is much more than 500,000 gold coins. After hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, Xue Zhizheng became stunned as he asked tentatively, Deputy Head Zhang, are you asking for the second condition on behalf of Tan Thunder Sect? Zhang Chunren nodded. That's right, our secret Thunder Sect spends a lot of money to buy information every year in order to search for ores. If we can obtain the free information from the Shadow Alliance for the next 5 years, then we will be able to save a lot of money. Not only that, we can also get more accurate information and find more ores. At that time, the strength of our secret Thunder Sect will definitely improve greatly. We might even become the #1 sect in the South County. Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for Xue Zhizheng to answer him. Hall Master Xue, don't you want our secret Thunder Sect to improve greatly and become the #1 sect in the South County? Hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, Xue Zhizheng was a little moved. He didn't expect that Zhang Chunren would still think of the secret Thunder Sect when he lost his only son. This was really rare and precious. Xue Zhizheng stepped forward and patted Zhang Chunren on the shoulder. He smiled and said, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, it seems that I misunderstood you. It turns out that you are thinking of the secret Thunder Sect. Zhang Chunren nodded and replied solemnly, Hall Master Xue, as the Deputy Hall Master of the secret Thunder Sect in the South County, how can I not think of the secret Thunder Sect? Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for Xue Zhizheng to answer him. Hall Master Xue, I hope you can support me and let Yi Tianhua agree to my second condition. Hearing this, Xue Zhizheng nodded. Then, he raised his head to look at Yi Tianhua and said loudly, Yi Tianhua, I think you should agree. You agreed to the first condition, so why don't you agree to the second condition? Yi Tianhua shook his head and said with a wry smile, Hall Master Xue, it's not that I don't want to agree, but this matter is too important. If I agree rashly, I'm afraid I'll cause trouble. Zhang Chunren snorted coldly, Yi Tianhua, what trouble? I think you just want to do it half-heartedly. You don't have any sincerity to repent. Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, and Hongdao was furious. Zhang Chunren, if we're not sincere, why did we come to the appointment? Zhang Chunren shook his head. And Hongdao, if you don't come to the appointment, I'll immediately spread this matter, and let everyone in the South County know who the Shadow Alliance is. And Hongdao sneered. Zhang Chunren, I think you're being unreasonable. This matter clearly has nothing to do with us, but you want us to compensate. This is clearly the act of a villain. Zhang Chunren sneered. Your Shadow Alliance deliberately framed us. Is this a righteous act? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, and Hongda shouted sternly, Zhang Chunren, don't talk nonsense. We didn't know about this matter, so how can we frame you? Yuan Weiqing said coldly, and Hongda, you're too shameless. You used fake news to frame me, but you don't dare to admit it. What kind of heroes are you? LV Hushan also said loudly, that's right. Since you dare to do it, you have to dare to admit it. What are you doing but not daring to say it? If this isn't a villain, what is? After hearing the words of the two, An Hongdao was so angry that his lungs almost exploded. He shouted sternly, don't talk nonsense. What evidence do you have to prove that we framed you? Yuan Weiqing sneered and said, Evidence? And Hongda, we all know that the snow leopard won't wander around. Other than its own territory, the snow leopard won't go anywhere. Since that's the case, it's enough to prove that you already knew about the snow leopard, but you didn't tell us. Why is that? Who would believe that you didn't have bad intentions? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, An Hongda couldn't help but frown. He still didn't understand what was going on with the snow leopard. If the snow leopard was found in the place where the flaming stone was found, it was enough to prove that it was the snow leopard's territory. But why didn't he know? Thinking of this, his frown deepened. Seeing that An Hongda was speechless, Yuan Weiqing sneered again. An Hongda, you have nothing to say. Now that the evidence is conclusive, it's your Shadow Alliance that deliberately didn't tell us this information, causing Zhang Huixing to be killed by the snow leopard. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment before continuing. Not only that, our secret Thunder sect also lost 2 senior craftsmen. How are we going to settle this debt? Just as An Hongda was speechless, Du Wudai suddenly said loudly, I understand. Yuan Weiqing, I understand now. There are no snow leopards on Qingling Mountain. All of this is just nonsense. Your goal is naturally to frame us. Yuan Weiqing, am I right? Hearing Du Wudai's words, An Hongda suddenly realized that he had been acting according to Zhang Chuanren's arrangements. Hearing Du Wudai's words, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment before saying loudly, You're talking nonsense. If there's no snow leopard, how could Zhang Huixing and our 2 senior craftsmen be killed? Hearing this, Du Wudai shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, I don't care how they were killed. I just want to tell you that your lies can't fool us. Hearing Du Wudai's words, Zhang Chunren suddenly snorted. Du Wudai, your words are so nice. Why don't you let me kill your son and then you can lie to me? What do you think? LV Hushan said loudly. Du Wudai, you're really talking nonsense. How could our Vice Hall Master Zhang talk nonsense about such things? Du Wudai shook his head. I'm not talking nonsense. On Qingling Mountain, we really didn't find any snow leopard. If we did, we would definitely warn you. Just now, you said that snow leopards wouldn't leave their territory easily. However, we didn't find any snow leopards there. This is enough to prove that there's no snow leopard on Qingling Mountain. There must be another reason why Zhang Huixing and the 2 senior craftsmen were killed. That's why such a tragedy happened. After hearing Du Wudai's words, Yi Tianhua suddenly realized that he had actually walked into the wrong place. If what Du Wudai said was true, then there was no snow leopard on Qingling Mountain. Zhang Huixing and the 2 senior craftsmen were killed for other reasons. If that was the case, then this matter could be explained. Thinking of this, Yi Tianhua turned his head to look at Shui Zhizheng and said loudly, Hall Master Shui, you heard it too. There's no snow leopard on Qingling Mountain. Everything they said was false. Zhang Chunren sneered. Yi Tianhua, are you trying to say that we're lying? Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment. However, he didn't wait for Yi Tianhua to reply and continued to speak. Yi Tianhua, then tell me why I said that. Also, how did my son and the 2 senior craftsmen die? Can you tell me? Yi Tianhua was stunned for a moment before he shook his head. I don't know. I only want to say that there's no snow leopard on Qingling Mountain because we didn't warn you. Speaking of this, Yi Tianhua paused for a moment before he continued. So, this matter has nothing to do with us. It's your own fault that you made such a big mistake. After hearing Yi Tianhua's words, Shui Zhizheng started to believe him. He turned his head to look at Zhang Chunren and asked softly. Vice Hall Master Zhang, is there a reason that we don't know about? Zhang Chunren shook his head. Hall Master Shui, this is all nonsense. Our people clearly found snow leopard on Qingling Mountain, but they said that there was no snow leopard on Qingling Mountain. If this isn't a lie, then what is? Hearing this, Shui Zhizheng frowned. But why would he want to harm us? Speaking of this, Shui Zhizheng paused for a moment before he continued, "We've bought information from the Shadow Alliance a few times, and there's never been a mistake. But this time, why are there so many mistakes?" Zhang Chunren shook his head. Tianhua is ambitious. Who knows what he's thinking? Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment before he continued, "However, what Yuan Weiqing said just now is right. If Tianhua really thinks this way, then our Tanlei sect is in danger." Hearing this, Shui Zhizheng shook his head slightly. "This is just Yuan Weiqing's guess. We and the Shadow Alliance have not interfered with each other for so many years. Why would they want to harm us?" Speaking of this, Shui Zhizheng paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for Zhang Chunren to answer his question and continued. "Even if Tianhua's plan succeeds and all 10 of our Tanlei sect's senior craftsmen are killed, so what? Even if they destroy our Tanlei sect, what can they get? If you think about it carefully, the Shadow Alliance won't get anything in the end after destroying our Tanlei sect, because the most important things of the Tanlei sect are firearms and those senior craftsmen. But if those senior craftsmen are all killed, what is left of the Tanlei sect? If the Shadow Alliance defeats the Tanlei sect, they will only get some territory. Could it be that the Shadow Alliance is doing this just to get these territories?" Hearing Shui Zhizheng muttering to himself, Zhang Chunren couldn't help but frown. "Hall Master Shui, let's not speculate about these things for now. The most important thing now is the matter of my son, Zhang Huosheng. They deliberately concealed the matter of the snow leopard, causing my son and 2 senior craftsmen to be killed. We must settle this account clearly." Hearing this, Shui Zhizheng nodded. "This account indeed needs to be settled. However, if we misunderstood Tianhua, then wouldn't it be too wrong of us to do this?" After hearing Shui Zhizheng's words, Zhang Chunren suddenly turned his head and asked loudly, "Hall Master Shui, are you suspecting me?" Seeing this, Shui Zhizheng hurriedly waved his hand. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, you misunderstood. I am just stating the facts. I am afraid that we have done something wrong." Hearing Shui Zhizheng's answer, Zhang Chunren sighed. "Hall Master Shui, don't blame me for being angry. If what happened to me happened to you, I can guarantee that you would be angrier than me." After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Shui Zhizheng suddenly remembered the matter of his son, Zhang Huosheng. He couldn't help but sigh and nod sympathetically. "Huosheng's matter is really regrettable." Zhang Chunren shook his head and said bitterly, "Hall Master Shui, do you think I would joke about my son's matter?" Hearing this, Shui Zhizheng hurriedly shook his head. "How is that possible? How could you joke about this?" You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.